Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos. After the main character dies, he wakes up inside of My Hero Academia with a template of Sosuke Aizen from Bleach. How will he react to All for One? How will he react to All Might? What is he gonna do inside of My Hero Academia with the template of Sosuke Aizen?
MHA, Reborn with Aizen Sosuke template. Chapter 1, A Quiet Awakening. When I opened my eyes, the sterile light of a hospital ceiling greeted me. The white was so sharp it hurt to look at, and yet my body responded before my mind had fully adjusted. My breathing was steady. My heart beat calm. But then memory struck. The last thing I remembered of my old life was the sudden, violent impact. A blaring horn. A truck that appeared where I hadn't expected it. A second of pain, then nothing. The end had been simple, without dignity. Yet here I was. Awake. Alive. It was not my body. I knew it instantly. The weight of my limbs, the clarity of my senses, even the flow of spiritual energy, I could feel it coursing through me like a second bloodstream. This body was not my own. Then it came. A sound. Ding. A voice followed. Mechanical, detached. You are granted the template of Aizen Sosuke's strength. Current access, 0.1%. The words settled into me like a decree, and for the first time I felt the immensity of it. Aizen. His name. His legacy. His strength. Even diluted to such a fraction, it coursed through me with quiet devastation. My fingers twitched, and I could feel the weight of worlds trembling behind the smallest motion. I knew enough to understand the scale. Even 1% of his true power could unmake this world. A world of quirks, of heroes and villains compared to Aizen, they were children grasping at sparks. I had been given a fragment, and it was already more than enough. Then another voice followed, soft and clinical. Mission assigned, act as Aizen Sosuke. My eyes narrowed. Aizen was never simply a man of strength. He was a manipulator. A deceiver. He commanded loyalty, bred fear, and hid his true self behind layers of calm civility until the moment he chose to act. To act as Aizen meant more than wielding his power. It meant embodying his role. I sat up on the hospital bed. My reflection in the glass pane beside me confirmed it: dark hair, controlled eyes, the same presence of a man who was always steps ahead of everyone else. I would live as him. But this was not his world. This was a world I knew: My Hero Academia. Heroes, villains, the symbol of peace. The rise of All for One and the birth of All Might's legacy. The future of Deku. The endless clashes between ideals. And now, me. If I revealed my strength, everything would break. So I would not. I would do what Aizen always did best: I would hide. I would manipulate belief. I would allow them to underestimate me until it was too late. A quirk. That was the currency here. Everyone had one. If I was to blend in, I needed to present mine. Aizen's true ability, the manipulation of perception, Kaika Suijutsu, was too dangerous to reveal. But the idea was perfect to twist. Instead of complete hypnosis, I would declare my quirk as fog creation, an ability to release mist that confuses targets, making them attack each other. It was believable. It was subtle. And it gave me a reason to be underestimated. I leaned back against the hospital bed, thoughts steady. Yes. That would do. The door slid open. A nurse peeked in, clipboard in hand. Ah, you're awake. You've been out for 2 days after your quirk accident. How are you feeling? I smiled lightly, the kind that revealed nothing. I'm fine. Just disoriented. She nodded quickly, jotting something down. Good. The doctors said your quirk manifested unusually strong for your age. They were worried about side effects. But it looks like you'll recover. So that was the cover. Perfect. I see, I replied, adjusting my tone to be calm, polite. My quirk creates fog. Sometimes it's difficult to control. The lie slipped out effortlessly, and she accepted it without hesitation. That was the advantage of speaking with certainty, no one questions it. As she left, I considered the path forward. To live as Aizen meant preparation. He never acted rashly. He built his pieces, one by one, until the board itself belonged to him. This world had heroes. It had villains. But what it lacked was someone like Aizen. And now, I was here. Chapter 2, a gentle smile. The morning air was cold against my skin as I laced up my shoes. The city was already awake, the sound of traffic mixing with the faint chatter of people on their way to work. Japan moved with efficiency, the kind of rhythm that made it easy to disappear into the crowd. I preferred that for now. I stepped outside, stretching my limbs, and let my breath steady before beginning to run. My pace was smooth, unhurried, and I let my thoughts turn inward as my body adjusted to the rhythm. This was the start of something significant. Yesterday had confirmed what I already knew, my path here could not be rushed. If I wanted to live as Aizen Sosuke, then I had to build the foundation with patience. He never forced situations. He guided them. And if I was to embody him in this world, then the same discipline was required. For now, that meant acting as the kind, polite man everyone trusted. Aizen's greatest weapon was never his power, it was the faith people placed in him. They saw him as reliable, considerate, someone who placed others before himself. I needed to adopt that face. The road beneath me stretched long and familiar. I passed a few joggers, offering a polite nod, and received smiles in return. Every detail mattered. Every impression was a step toward shaping the identity I wanted others to believe. But as I turned the corner into a small park, the quiet morning broke. 2 boys, no older than me, stood in the center of the clearing, shouting at each other. Their quirks had activated in bursts of uncontrolled force. One hurled shards of hardened stone from his hands, each strike leaving cracks in the path and gouges in the benches. The other released jets of fire from his palms, scorching the grass and setting a tree alight. People had gathered at the edge of the park, uncertain and afraid. No heroes had arrived yet. It was too small, too early. But the damage was spreading. A bench splintered under a barrage of stone. Fire licked at the tree trunk, black smoke curling upward. I slowed my pace to a walk. My expression remained calm, pleasant, even as I assessed the situation. Children fighting. A lack of control. No sense of the danger they were causing. Stop it. You're going to hurt someone, a woman shouted from the side. The boys ignored her. I exhaled softly. This was an opportunity. I stepped forward, placing myself between the panicked onlookers and the combatants. My voice was steady, measured, the same tone Aizen had always used when he wanted to calm others. Both of you, I said, projecting my voice clearly without raising it, you should stop before anyone gets hurt. They hesitated for only a moment before turning their aggression toward me. The fire user narrowed his eyes. Stay out of this. He thrust his hand forward, flame gathering in his palm. I raised my hand just slightly, and the air around us shifted. A mist spread outward from me, thin at first, then denser, until the clearing was covered in pale fog. It wasn't my true power. This was nothing compared to Kaika Suijutsu. But it was enough for the lie I had chosen to live. The boys blinked, disoriented, as the haze wrapped around them. Their eyes darted nervously, no longer sure of their target. The stone user turned suddenly, hurling a shard toward his companion instead of me. The fire user recoiled, shouting in anger. What the hell are you doing? They clashed against each other, disoriented, their attacks striking wildly but no longer endangering the crowd. I stepped closer, letting the fog curl protectively around me, and spoke again, my voice calm but firm. You see? This is what happens when you lose control. You hurt each other instead of protecting yourselves. The boys froze, chests heaving, their bravado slipping as they realized how foolish they looked. I let the fog dissipate slowly, leaving the air clear once more. The fire user lowered his hands first, scowling but no longer attacking. The stone user glanced at the damaged park, his expression shifting from anger to shame. I smiled gently at them. It's good to have strength. But strength without discipline only causes suffering. Next time, think before you act. Neither responded. But they didn't need to. The fight had ended. The gathered crowd murmured in relief. A man in a business suit clapped me on the shoulder. That was amazing, kid. You stopped them without even raising your fists. I gave a modest smile, bowing slightly. I only did what anyone would do. I'm glad no one was hurt. The man shook his head. Don't sell yourself short. If you hadn't stepped in, they would have burned down half the park. The crowd's gratitude was immediate and genuine. They saw me as calm, reliable, and selfless. Exactly as I intended. I excused myself politely, leaving the scene before anyone could press further. Heroes would likely arrive soon, and while I had no fear of them, it was too early to draw unnecessary attention. As I resumed my run, I considered what had just happened. It had been a small matter, but it confirmed something important. I could play the part of the benevolent figure, and people would believe it. But I needed more than small acts. I needed to position myself where influence grew naturally, where people looked to me as a leader. In this world, there was only one place suited for that, beginning U.A. High school. The academy was the foundation of hero society. Its students were the next generation of symbols. If I was to shape this world as Aizen would, then I had to stand among them, not as an outsider but as one of their own. By the time I returned home, my decision was made. I would enter UA. The entrance exam day arrived with clear skies. Students gathered outside the gates, their chatter a mixture of nerves and excitement. They spoke of their quirks, their dreams, their determination to be heroes. I walked among them with quiet composure. My uniform was plain, my presence unobtrusive, yet heads turned when I offered a kind word or a reassuring smile. Don't worry, I said to a boy who was trembling as he checked his papers for the 5th time. Nervousness only shows how much this means to you. That feeling will guide you. His shoulders relaxed, and he nodded gratefully. Another girl fretted over the possibility of combat in the exam. What if I can't handle it? What if I freeze up? I gave her the same gentle smile. Courage isn't about never being afraid. It's about choosing to act even when you are. You'll do fine. She blushed slightly and thanked me. Piece by piece, impression by impression, I was weaving the same quiet trust Aizen had always inspired. When the written test concluded, the practical exam was explained. Villain robots. Points for defeating them. Additional points hidden in the evaluation. The others tensed with determination. I remained relaxed. When the gates opened, chaos erupted as students rushed forward, unleashing their quirks with reckless abandon. Ice, explosions, lasers, quirks of every variety filled the battlefield. I moved at a measured pace, letting my fog spread where necessary. Robots malfunctioned, striking at each other as confusion clouded their systems. My strikes were simple, precise, never flashy. I downed enough targets to remain competitive but never revealed more than what fit my facade. What mattered most wasn't my score. It was how I appeared. calm, helpful, reliable. When one boy tripped, about to be crushed under a robot's arm, I was there, pulling him to safety. Stay focused, I told him gently, before moving on. When a girl's quirk failed to break a robot's armor, I stepped in, a sweep of fog sending it stumbling back. She gasped in relief. I smiled, nodding. You did well. Don't doubt yourself. By the time the exam ended, the students looked to me with a subtle sense of reassurance. Not because I was the strongest, but because I seemed dependable. That was what mattered. And so, when the results came, it was no surprise to me. I had been accepted into Class 1A. Chapter 3, The Symbol of Peace. The acceptance letter had arrived exactly as I expected, the recorded voice of All Might himself, congratulating me on my admission to UA High School. His tone was filled with enthusiasm, his smile radiating confidence. It was the same image that Japan idolized, the reason countless children dreamed of becoming heroes. And now, I would stand before him. The first day of UA began with sunlight spilling over the campus. The gates of the academy towered high, the flow of students around me buzzing with nervous excitement. Some were whispering about their results from the entrance exam, others about which heroes they hoped to meet. I walked among them quietly. My pace was measured, my posture relaxed, my smile calm. Every glance I received in return softened when they met my eyes. I greeted those who made eye contact with a polite nod or a kind word. You did well on the exam, I said to one boy whose confidence wavered. Be proud of that. He blinked in surprise, then smiled shyly and nodded. It was a small thing, but such small things built the foundation I wanted. Inside, the halls were filled with the sound of footsteps and chatter. Students carried their bags, searching for their assigned classrooms. When I reached the door marked 1A, I paused briefly before stepping in. The room was large, desks arranged in neat rows. Some students were already inside. I recognized several from the exam: Midoriya, the green-haired boy whose determination had been clear even in his clumsy movements, Bakugo, the blonde with explosive temper written across his face, and others whose quirks had left impressions. I entered quietly, choosing a seat near the middle. I offered a polite greeting to those around me. Good morning, I said, voice warm but subdued. A few replied quickly, still caught in their own nerves. Midoriya looked at me, startled, then gave a small wave before returning to his notes. Bakugo didn't acknowledge me at all, his eyes sharp and dismissive as he leaned back in his chair. That was fine. The chatter in the room grew louder until the door opened again. All Might stepped inside. Even in his weakened state, he had transformed into his muscular form, filling the doorway with sheer presence. His booming voice carried across the classroom. I am here. Walking through the door like a normal person. The students erupted in excitement. Several gasped, some cheered, and others looked like they could hardly believe what they were seeing. The symbol of peace himself, standing before them as their teacher. I remained composed, watching him carefully. His energy was overwhelming by design, meant to inspire awe and comfort all at once. It was effective. The students' nerves melted into enthusiasm as he stood there, smiling with all the confidence in the world. Welcome, Class 1A, he declared, his voice echoing off the walls. From this day forward, you are all UA students, training to become pro-heroes. This is the first step toward your bright futures. The students clapped, their excitement filling the room. I smiled as well, though more softly. When his eyes briefly swept across the room and met mine, I inclined my head in respectful acknowledgement. His gaze lingered on me for just a moment longer before moving on. He continued with his speech, explaining the importance of discipline, training, and the path that awaited us. His words carried weight because of who he was, and the students absorbed every syllable with admiration. When he finished, he clapped his massive hands together. But talk alone won't make heroes. We're starting today with a practical exercise. You'll be wearing your hero costumes, testing your quirks, and showing us what you can do. The students erupted again, this time with nervous laughter and excited chatter. All Might's energy was infectious, but I could see the way it pressured some of the weaker students. Their hands fidgeted, their eyes darted nervously. It was too much for them all at once. I raised my hand slightly, waiting for All Might's attention. "Yes, young man," he boomed, pointing toward me. I smiled calmly. "If I may, All Might. Some of my classmates look a little uneasy. Perhaps a word of reassurance from you would help remind them that today is about learning, not just competition." The room went silent for a moment. Several students turned to look at me, surprised that I had spoken up so directly to the symbol of peace. All Might blinked, then his grin widened. "Ha! You're absolutely right, young man. Very thoughtful of you to point that out." He turned back to the class. "Everyone, remember this well. Today isn't about proving who is better, it's about showing me where you stand, so we can help you improve. Even failure here is just another step forward." Relief washed over some of the nervous students. I saw shoulders relax, breath steady. A few even glanced at me with gratitude. All Might pointed at me again, his booming voice carrying warmth. "And that, right there, is the kind of awareness a true hero needs. Looking out not just for yourself, but for those around you." The students murmured, impressed. My smile remained gentle, unassuming, as if I had only spoken what anyone would. "Thank you, All Might," I said politely. He laughed, clapping his massive hands. "Excellent. Now, let's move on." We were taken to the locker rooms, each of us given our costumes. Mine was designed around the false identity of my quirk. A long, flowing coat with faint patterns meant to evoke mist, paired with gloves that looked as if they filtered vapor. Simple, elegant, but not intimidating. It suited the role I wanted to play, reliable, supportive, not threatening. When we stepped outside, All Might waited for us at the training grounds. He spread his arms wide. "Splendid! You all look fantastic in your hero costumes. Now we'll begin the quirk apprehension test." The students tensed again, but this time with eagerness. I stood among them, calm as ever. My role was not to stand out too much here. It was to show consistency, to let others grow comfortable with me. The tests began, the 50-meter dash, the grip strength, the long jump, and more. One by one, students demonstrated their quirks. Bakugo's explosions lit up the track. Midoriya struggled visibly, holding back his power. Todoroki's eyes spread with cold precision. Uraraka floated objects with a touch. When my turn came, I used my fog sparingly. A small release during the ball throw disoriented its sensors, allowing me to strike and send it flying farther than expected. My performance was impressive but not extraordinary. Carefully balanced. All Might recorded the results, shouting encouragement at every turn. But during a brief break, he approached me directly. "Young man," he said, his voice lowering slightly from its usual thunder, though still bright. "What is your name?" I bowed slightly. "Aizen, sir." "Ha! A fine name." He smiled down at me. "You seem very composed for someone your age. And you're quick to notice the feelings of others. That's a valuable trait for a hero." I returned his smile with quiet warmth. "I only believe that if we want to stand together as heroes, we must also take care of one another. Strength alone isn't enough." His eyes widened slightly, then his grin broadened further. "Well said. You remind me of myself when I was younger. The heart of a true hero beats in those words. The students nearby heard him, and I could feel their perception of me shift again. Respect. Trust. Exactly as I wanted. I bowed again. Thank you, All Might. I'll do my best to live up to your example. Splendid, he declared, clapping me on the shoulder with enough force to rattle my bones. I'll be watching your growth with great interest. I smiled gently, hiding the truth behind calm eyes. Of course, All Might. I'll work hard. By the time the tests ended, exhaustion had taken its toll on the class. All Might dismissed us with a booming laugh, reminding us to keep pushing forward. As the students began to leave, several approached me directly. You really helped earlier, one said. When you spoke up, I felt less nervous. Another nodded. Yeah. Thanks for that. I waved it off with a modest smile. I only wanted everyone to enjoy the day without worry. We'll grow together as classmates, that's what matters. Their gratitude was genuine. Their trust was forming. And All Might, the symbol of peace himself, had already marked me as someone to watch. The first step had been taken. Chapter 4, Words of Reassurance. The first day of UA had ended, but its weight still lingered in the air. Our tests with All Might had pushed the class, exposing both strengths and weaknesses. Some had shone brightly. Others had faltered. Among those who struggled most was Izuku Midoriya. He had tried to hide it, but I noticed the way his hand trembled when he threw the ball. I saw the tightness in his jaw when Bakugo barked insults at him. And more than anything, I heard the silence that hung around him when the results were tallied, as though he feared every step was a step closer to failure. I remembered All Might's brief glance toward him during the test. There was something unspoken there. Something more than simple teacher-student concern. It wasn't my role to pry, not yet, but it confirmed what I already suspected. Midoriya carried a burden larger than most. When classes let out and students began to drift toward the dorms and gates, I noticed Midoriya walking alone, his shoulders slumped, his notebook clutched to his chest. He moved quietly, as though he didn't want to be noticed. This was the moment. I adjusted my pace, falling into step beside him with a soft smile. Midoriya, isn't it? He nearly jumped at the sound of his name, spinning his head toward me with wide eyes. Why, yes. That's me. His voice cracked nervously. And you're Aizen, right? I inclined my head slightly. That's right. I couldn't help but notice you seemed troubled today. His face flushed immediately, and he shook his head. And no, it's nothing. I wasn't very good in the tests, that's all. Everyone else was amazing. I'm just not there yet. I slowed my steps so we wouldn't rush. There's no need to diminish yourself. Everyone here is still learning. Even the strongest among us has flaws to overcome. Midoriya looked down at the ground, his fingers tightening around the edge of his notebook. But you were calm the whole time. You didn't seem nervous at all. I wish I could be like that. I smiled gently, my tone warm. Calm is not the absence of nerves. It is the decision to keep moving forward despite them. You have that ability too, Midoriya. He blinked, startled by the certainty in my voice. You really think so? Of course. I kept my eyes on him, kind and unwavering. During the exam, I saw how hard you pushed yourself. Even when it was difficult, you didn't give up. That alone speaks of strength. A true hero isn't defined by talent, but by persistence. His breath hitched, and for a moment his shoulders eased. I want to believe that. But Bakugo, he's always been stronger. And everyone else, they have quirks that make them look like real heroes. I'm just he trailed off. I let the silence hang for a moment before speaking again. Midoriya, have you ever considered that your greatest strength might not be obvious to others? He looked at me with confusion. You analyze. You think deeply about the people around you, about their quirks, their strategies. I saw you scribbling in your notebook even during breaks. That attention to detail is rare. Many overlook it, but it is a power of its own. His eyes widened, stunned that someone had noticed. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again. Why, you saw that? I chuckled softly, shaking my head. It was impossible to miss, Midoriya. And it impressed me. You remind me of the kind of person who notices what others cannot. That is the mark of a leader, whether you realize it or not. His face flushed deeply, his steps faltering for a moment. A leader? Me? I don't think anyone's ever said that about me before. I let my expression soften, my voice as reassuring as possible. That only means they failed to see what was already there. Don't measure yourself by how others treat you. Measure yourself by what you choose to become. He stopped walking, staring at me as though the weight of my words held him still. Then slowly, a small, hesitant smile broke across his face. Thank you, Aizen. That really means a lot. I inclined my head slightly. You don't need to thank me. We're classmates now. Supporting one another is the least we can do. For the first time since I'd spoken to him, he laughed softly. You're really different from the others. Everyone's so focused on proving themselves, but you actually care. I returned his smile, warm and steady. Heroes who cannot care for those around them are not worthy of the title. The words settled over him, and I saw the way they lifted him, even if just a little. That was enough. By the time we reached the dorms, Midoriya was walking a little taller, his notebook held more loosely in his arms. He hesitated before parting ways, then turned back to me. Aizen, do you think I can really become a hero? Even if I'm not like everyone else? I held his gaze, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make the moment sincere. Then I nodded firmly. Yes, Midoriya. You can. Because being a hero isn't about what you were born with. It's about what you choose to stand for. And I can see already you will stand for more than most. His eyes shone with sudden emotion, and he bowed deeply. I'll remember that. Thank you. I raised a hand lightly, stopping him from bowing further. There's no need for that. Just keep moving forward. That will be thanks enough. He nodded, smiling nervously, then hurried off toward his room. I watched him go, the corners of my lips curling slightly. His gratitude was genuine, his trust already beginning to take root. With the right words, the right support, Midoriya would not only see me as a friend, he would see me as a mentor. Someone to look to when his own doubts threatened to overwhelm him. It was exactly as I intended. Chapter 5, A Foundation of Trust. The morning sun had barely risen when I entered Class 1A's homeroom. The room was bright with energy, students chatting in clusters around their desks. Some spoke with enthusiasm, others with nerves, but all carried the eagerness of those still adjusting to their new lives at UA. I arrived early, as I always intended to. A hero, after all, should appear dependable. My seat was near the middle, and from there, I had a clear view of the entire class. It was fascinating how quickly patterns were forming. Bakugo sat with arms crossed, his glare sharp enough to silence those who tried to engage him. His presence radiated hostility, though his classmates already seemed accustomed to it, or at least resigned. Midoriya sat quietly, scribbling furiously in his notebook. His hands trembled faintly as he wrote, but his focus never wavered. He avoided Bakugo's eyes, though the weight of their history lingered in every movement. Ida stood tall at his desk, lecturing two students on punctuality and discipline, his arms chopping through the air with exaggerated precision. His voice carried across the room, commanding attention whether or not it was wanted. Eureka chatted cheerfully with a small group, her laughter light and unrestrained. She had an ease that softened the tension around her. Todoroki remained silent, seated near the window, his eyes distant. He gave no effort to interact with the others, though his presence was impossible to ignore. Each dynamic spoke volumes. Conflict, insecurity, ambition, kindness, and distance. These were the raw threads of the class. All that remained was how they would be woven together. I folded my hands neatly on my desk and waited, a pleasant smile on my face. "Good morning," I said, my voice calm, directed to no one in particular yet reaching everyone. Several turned to acknowledge me. Eureka smiled warmly and waved. "Good morning, Aizen." I returned her smile. "I hope you rested well after yesterday's tests. You seemed full of energy then, and even more so now." Her cheeks colored slightly. "Oh, thank you. I was a little nervous, but seeing everyone else try so hard helped a lot." "You did more than try," I said kindly. "Your quirk is unique, and you used it well. It will serve you greatly as you grow." She beamed at the compliment, her confidence subtly reinforced. From the corner of my eye, Ida approached, his hands moving in sharp gestures. "Aizen, your punctuality is commendable. Arriving early sets an example for the entire class. Discipline is essential if we are to succeed as future heroes." I inclined my head politely. "You are right, Ida. Structure and discipline provide stability. Without them, our training would falter." His expression brightened, glasses flashing as he nodded. "Exactly. I am pleased to see another who understands the importance of order." I let him continue, his energy spilling outward, while I offered measured responses that supported his sense of responsibility. Already he was warming to me, seeing me as an ally in his pursuit of order. Meanwhile, Midoriya glanced up from his notes, his eyes darting nervously between Bakugo and me. I smiled gently at him, offering a quiet reassurance. He hesitated, then gave a small nod before returning to his scribbles, comforted. Bakugo, however, scoffed audibly. "Tch. You're all wasting time." The room fell briefly quiet. His voice cut sharp through the air, and his scowl made it clear he had no interest in conversation. I turned my head toward him, my expression as calm as ever. "Good morning, Bakugo." He glared at me, his lip curling. "Don't act like you're my friend." I met his hostility with the same pleasant tone. "Friendship is not required. But respect among classmates will help us all." His eyes narrowed, but he looked away, unwilling to push further. The others watched in silence, surprised I had spoken to him so evenly. I returned to my seat as though nothing had happened, and slowly, the chatter resumed. A small ripple, but one that shifted the way the class saw me. By the time Aizawa entered, wrapped in his sleeping bag and looking as though he'd rather be anywhere else, the class had settled. His presence silenced the chatter with ease. "Settle down," he muttered, pulling himself free from the bag. "Today we're continuing your training. Don't waste time." His tone was flat, his eyes half-lidded, but every student straightened at once. His authority was not loud like All Might's, but it was absolute in its own way. The day's lessons unfolded, a mixture of physical training and lectures on hero fundamentals. Throughout, I observed carefully. When Ida over-explained instructions, I offered gentle interjections to prevent him from overwhelming others. "Ida, you explained it well. I think everyone understands." When Eureka struggled briefly during an exercise, I offered encouragement. "Your balance improves with each attempt. Don't lose confidence." When Midoriya hesitated, I gave him quiet support. You are analyzing correctly. Trust your instincts. Each word was small, but every word mattered. Slowly, my classmates began to look toward me not as competition, but as someone reliable. Even Todoroki's eyes lingered briefly, though he said nothing. His silence was his choice, but it told me he noticed. At lunch, the cafeteria buzzed with noise. Groups formed naturally, and I moved easily between them. With Eureka and her friends, I shared polite conversation about the food. With Ida, I discussed discipline and teamwork. With Midoriya, I asked about his notes, listening intently as he nervously explained his analyses of quirks. You have a remarkable eye for detail, I told him, and his face flushed with pride. Even those I didn't directly engage began to feel my presence. Kaminari, Kirishima, Mina, they all offered casual greetings, smiles, or nods when I passed. It was effortless, and yet deliberate. The role of the dependable classmate was taking root. By the end of the day, as we left the building, Ida approached me once more. Aizen, I wanted to thank you. Your conduct sets a fine example. I hope others follow it. I smiled. We all have strengths to share. I only hope to encourage them. Eureka chimed in from nearby. You're always so nice, Aizen. It makes things feel less stressful. Midoriya nodded quietly beside her, his eyes bright with gratitude. I bowed slightly. That means a great deal to me. I only want our class to succeed together. And so, as the sun began to set, I walked back to the dorms surrounded by the subtle shift of perception. They were beginning to see me not as an individual, but as a cornerstone. The one they could trust, the one they could rely on. Exactly as planned. Chapter 6, A Clash of Tempers. The second week of classes had settled into rhythm. Training exercises, written lessons, evaluations. Everyone had begun to understand the pace and pressure of UA, and though exhaustion hung on many faces, so too did a growing sense of pride. But within that pride, tension stirred. I had seen it in Bakugo from the beginning. His glare, his dismissal, the way his hands twitched with restrained explosions when others succeeded. He could not ignore me. Each day, as more of our classmates grew comfortable speaking with me, Bakugo's hostility sharpened. The cafeteria was no exception. Lunch had just begun, the clamor of voices filling the wide room. I sat with a small group: Eureka, Ida, and Midoriya sharing quiet conversation. Eureka laughed at something Ida had said, while Midoriya listened with hesitant smiles. It was then that Bakugo slammed his tray onto the table directly across from us, startling the group. His eyes locked on me, burning with irritation. You, he spat. What the hell is your deal? The chatter around us dimmed as students glanced toward our table. Bakugo's voice had carried, his aggression impossible to ignore. I set my chopsticks down calmly, folding my hands before me. Bakugo. Good afternoon. Don't give me that fake polite crap, he snarled, leaning forward. You've been acting all high and mighty since day one. Smiling at everyone. Talking like you're better than us. You think I don't see it? Eureka stiffened, eyes darting nervously between us. Ida raised his hands in a sharp chopping motion. Bakugo. This is unnecessary hostility during a meal period. Please compose yourself. Bakugo ignored him, his attention fixed solely on me. His hands crackled faintly with sparks, the faint scent of burning ozone reaching the table. Midoriya froze beside me, his breath quickening, but he didn't speak. I met Bakugo's glare with the same calm smile I always wore. I don't believe I've ever claimed to be better than anyone. I only try to support our classmates where I can. Is that what upsets you? His lip curled, his chair screeching as he stood abruptly. You're acting like some kind of saint. Like everyone should look up to you. They're idiots for falling for it. His voice rose, anger spilling into the room. You're nothing special. I'll prove it. The cafeteria had grown quiet now, conversations dying as more students turned to watch. All eyes were on us. I stood slowly, my movements deliberate, unthreatening. My voice was steady, warm, exactly as Aizen's would be. Bakugo, I have no interest in competing with you. We are classmates. I respect your strength. Shut up. His hands flared with sparks, light reflecting in his furious eyes. Don't talk down to me like that. I let the silence stretch for a moment, then spoke softly enough that only those closest could hear, yet with clarity that carried. I would never talk down to you. You are strong, Bakugo. Everyone can see that. But anger blinds you to how much stronger you could become. His breath caught, fury warring with uncertainty. He clenched his fists, explosions crackling but held back. Around us, the class waited in tense silence. I could feel their perception shifting, not toward me, I had already secured their trust, but toward Bakugo. His hostility painted him as volatile, while my calm only reinforced their belief in me. Ida stepped forward, his voice sharp. Bakugo. Stand down immediately. This behavior is unbecoming of a hero in training. Bakugo growled, his teeth gritted, but he didn't strike. His eyes never left mine, filled with frustration. I lowered my voice, speaking with the same gentle certainty as always. Bakugo, I don't wish to be your enemy. If you want to surpass me, then do so with your actions, not your anger. That will earn you the respect you want. The words struck him harder than any blow. His body trembled with restrained rage, his jaw clenched so tight it seemed painful. Finally, with a violent hiss of breath, he turned sharply and stormed from the cafeteria, sparks trailing in his wake. The silence lingered for several seconds after he left. Then, slowly, the conversations resumed, though the atmosphere was changed. Eureka exhaled shakily. That was, really intense. She looked at me, concern in her eyes. Are you okay, Aizen? I smiled reassuringly. Of course. Bakugo is passionate. Sometimes passion overwhelms reason. But he is not without potential. Ida adjusted his glasses, his voice firm. You handled that situation with remarkable composure, Aizen. Your restraint prevented unnecessary conflict. Midoriya, however, remained silent, staring down at his food with a complicated expression. I placed a hand lightly on his shoulder, voice soft. Midoriya. Don't worry. Bakugo's anger is not your burden to carry. He glanced up at me, startled, then nodded hesitantly. Why yeah, you're right. The moment passed, the class slowly returning to normal. But the ripples remained. Bakugo's outburst had revealed his instability. My calm had reinforced my reliability. By the end of the day, whispers followed me in the halls. Did you see how Aizen handled Bakugo? He didn't even flinch. He's always so calm. Piece by piece, the image grew stronger. Dependable. Trustworthy. A leader without claiming to be one. Exactly as intended. Chapter 7, The Trial of Heroes and Villains. The classroom filled with excitement as All Might burst through the door in his usual fashion, his booming voice echoing through the walls. I am here. Coming through the door like a hero. The energy he brought into the room was overwhelming, pulling every pair of eyes toward him. Even the more stoic students, like Todoroki, straightened slightly in their seats. His presence was magnetic, larger than life. I folded my hands neatly on my desk, smiling faintly as I watched the reactions of my classmates. This was the image Japan adored, the symbol of peace, a figure who seemed invincible. To the others, his energy inspired. To me, it was something to study. All Might raised his arms wide. Today, we're going to take the first step into true hero work. Practical training, heroes versus villains. Gasps and murmurs spread through the class. Uraraka's eyes widened with excitement, Ida adjusted his glasses rapidly, and even Bakugo's lips curled into a grin of anticipation. All Might snapped his fingers dramatically. But first, you'll need costumes. The class erupted in cheers as we were directed toward the locker rooms. Inside the male locker room, students chattered as they changed. Kirishima admired the toughness of his gear, Kaminari boasted about the style of his, while Midoriya fiddled nervously with the unfamiliar fabric of his suit. I dressed calmly, my costume tailored for the role I had chosen to play. A long white coat with pale markings along the sleeves, designed to resemble vapor. Gloves with faint tubing along the wrists gave the impression of releasing mist. To anyone who saw it, it looked practical but modest, tailored to support my fog quirk. When I stepped into the hall, some glanced my way, their eyes briefly lingering on the design. I offered a small smile. The support department did well, don't you think? Everyone looks ready for real work. Kirishima grinned. Yet. Manly designs all around. Midoriya gave me a quick nod, though his hands fidgeted nervously at his sides. We gathered at the training grounds, where All Might awaited, his cape billowing dramatically in the artificial wind. Splendid, he boomed, surveying us. Now we'll simulate a scenario straight from reality. Villains have hidden a nuclear device inside a building. Heroes must stop them. Villains must protect it. Teams of 2. Hero side wins if they capture the villains or secure the device. Villain side wins if time runs out or the heroes are caught. The class buzzed with excitement, though some exchanged nervous glances. All teams will be decided by random drawing. All Might declared, presenting a box filled with slips of paper. One by one, students stepped forward to draw. Pairs formed, each reacting in their own way, some thrilled, some worried. When my turn came, I reached inside and drew a slip. Opening it, I read aloud calmly, Team E. Midoriya glanced at his own slip, then at me, his eyes widening slightly. I'm Team E too. I smiled at him warmly. Then it seems we'll be partners. His face flushed faintly, and he nodded quickly. Why yes. I'll do my best. I have no doubt, I said kindly. Our first match came sooner than expected. The opposing team consisted of Shiro and Ojiro, both assigned the role of villains. Midoriya and I, as heroes, were to infiltrate and secure the weapon inside the building. All Might raised his hand dramatically. Heroes, prepare at the entrance. Villains, take your positions inside. You have 5 minutes to strategize before we begin. As Ojiro and Shiro disappeared into the building, Midoriya fidgeted nervously beside me, his notebook clutched in hand. His breathing quickened as he scribbled rapidly. I placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. Breathe, Midoriya. We have time. What do you see? He froze, then looked at me uncertainly. Ojiro has enhanced agility in his tail. Shiro uses tape for long-range binding. Together they'll probably focus on mobility and trapping us. I nodded approvingly. Good. And how do you propose we respond? He blinked, startled. Me. Of course, I said warmly. You have a keen eye for analysis. Trust your instincts. He hesitated, then looked at his notes again. If we use my strength to push through too quickly, they'll corner us. But if we move carefully, we can avoid traps. Maybe your fog could obscure their vision and limit their range. I smiled. A sound strategy. Then let's proceed with that plan. His shoulders eased slightly, his confidence reinforced. All Might's voice thundered from above. Begin. We entered the building cautiously. The halls were dim, the air heavy with silence. Midoriya moved in front, his notebook tucked away now, his hands clenched in determination. I followed a step behind, my eyes scanning for signs of our opponents. Tape suddenly shot across the hallway from a corner, aiming for Midoriya's legs. He yelped, stumbling back, but I raised my hand, releasing a wave of pale fog that filled the corridor. The tape whipped harmlessly against the wall, its target obscured. Good. I said softly. Stay calm. Keep moving. Midoriya nodded, his breath shaky but steadier than before. We pressed forward, the fog trailing around us, limiting visibility for our opponents. Ojiro's tail lashed out from the side, striking through the mist, but missed by inches. Midoriya reacted quickly, driving forward with a burst of strength that forced Ojiro back. Excellent, Midoriya, I called encouragingly. Your timing was perfect. His face lit up briefly at the praise, even as he pressed the attack. Zero tried again, launching tape wildly through the fog, but his accuracy faltered. I moved smoothly, releasing controlled bursts of mist that redirected his focus, making him strike at empty space. Piece by piece, we advanced until we reached the room containing the weapon. The large mock device sat in the center, glowing faintly. Ojiro and Zero regrouped there, standing ready to defend it. Midoriya hesitated, glancing at me nervously. What should we do? I smiled gently. This is your moment, Midoriya. Lead us. His breath caught, but then he nodded, determination hardening in his eyes. Oh okay. I'll draw their attention. You use your fog to make an opening. I inclined my head. Very well. He charged forward, surprising even himself with the force of his movement. Ojiro engaged him quickly, their strikes clashing in the center of the room. Zero fired tape toward him, but I released another burst of fog, thick enough to distort his aim. The tape struck a wall instead. Through the mist, I stepped forward calmly, my hand brushing the weapon. All Might! I called. The heroes have secured the device. The alarm blared, signaling our victory. Back at the observation room, our classmates watched the replay on the monitors. All Might's booming voice rang out. Excellent teamwork from Team E. Midoriya, you showed initiative and courage. And Aizen, your calm support allowed your partner to shine. The class murmured, impressed. Uraraka clapped enthusiastically, and even Ida looked approving. Midoriya flushed deeply, his eyes wide as he stared at the screen. I did it. I placed a hand on his shoulder once more, speaking softly. Yes, you did. Believe in yourself, Midoriya. This is only the beginning. He turned to me, gratitude shining in his eyes. Thank you, Aizen. I couldn't have done it without you. I shook my head gently. On the contrary. You only needed someone to remind you of what you already had. The words settled over him, and his smile, though nervous, was brighter than before. Around us, the class continued to whisper about the match. My role had been clear to them, not the flashiest fighter, but the reliable one. The one who guided without claiming credit, who supported without overshadowing. Exactly as intended. Chapter 8, The Rivalry Unveiled. The training grounds buzzed with anticipation. After my match alongside Midoriya, the rest of the class had watched eagerly as team after team entered the mock building. Some succeeded, others faltered, but each match revealed more about everyone's quirks and personalities. And now, the tension rose higher than before. Next match. All Might boomed, his voice shaking the walls of the observation room. On the hero side, we have Team A, Midoriya Izuku and Uraraka Okako. And for the villains, Team D, Bakugo Katsuki and Ida Tinya. Gasps and murmurs spread quickly among the class. All eyes turned to Midoriya and Bakugo, both standing apart, their bodies tense in very different ways. Midoriya's hands clenched at his sides, his breathing uneven but his eyes sharp with determination. Bakugo's lips twisted into a grin, his body vibrating with restrained energy, explosions crackling faintly from his palms. Everyone knew this would not be just another training exercise. This was a clash years in the making. I stood at the back of the group, my arms folded loosely, my expression calm as ever. Yet inwardly, I observed with focus. Bakugo's hostility toward Midoriya had already revealed itself in words and glares. Now it would manifest in combat. And Midoriya, who still doubted himself deeply, would face not only an opponent, but his past. This was important to watch. All Might spread his arms wide. Villains, take your positions inside the building. Heroes, remain outside. You'll have 5 minutes to plan. Bakugo smirked at Midoriya as he passed, his eyes gleaming with contempt. Don't disappoint me, Deku. Midoriya stiffened but said nothing, his fists trembling as he watched Bakugo disappear with Ida into the building. Uraraka glanced nervously at him, then at me. He looks really intense. Do you think Midoriya will be okay? I smiled softly. Midoriya is stronger than he realizes. If he trusts himself, he'll surprise us all. Her expression brightened slightly. You really believe in him, don't you? Of course, I replied warmly. That is why he will succeed. She nodded, reassured, and turned her attention back to Midoriya. The planning time began. Midoriya paced, muttering rapidly under his breath as he scribbled in his notebook, his words spilling out too fast for Uraraka to follow. Bakugo's aggression, he'll rush me directly, his explosions are powerful but predictable. Ida will guard the weapon, must use Uraraka's quirk too. Uraraka blinked, overwhelmed. Midoriya? Slow down. I stepped closer, my tone calm. Midoriya. Take a breath. He froze, looking at me. Speak clearly, I continued. Uraraka is your partner. She needs to understand your thoughts. You don't need to say everything, only what matters most. His breathing steadied slightly. He nodded quickly, then turned to Uraraka. Okay. Bakugo will come for me first. He'll ignore you. So, while he's focused on me, you sneak past and head for the weapon. I'll hold him off. Uraraka blinked, surprised by the clarity, then smiled. Got it. I'll trust you, Midoriya. He flushed faintly but nodded firmly. The timer ended, and All Might's voice thundered again. Begin. The heroes entered the building, moving cautiously. Midoriya led the way, every muscle in his body tense. Uraraka followed closely, her eyes scanning the hallways nervously. From the monitors, the class watched eagerly. The screens showed different angles of the interior, capturing every movement. I kept my eyes fixed on Midoriya. His nerves were obvious, but so too was his determination. Then Bakugo struck. He burst from the shadows of the hallway with a roar, explosions erupting from his hands as he launched himself at Midoriya. The blast shook the corridor, smoke and sparks filling the air. Midoriya barely dodged, his body scraping against the wall as the explosion scorched the space where he'd been standing. Deku! Bakugo shouted, his voice filled with rage. I've been waiting for this. Another explosion propelled him forward, his movements wild but terrifyingly fast. Midoriya's eyes widened, but his muttering stopped. His body moved instead, blocking with his arms and countering with a desperate strike. Bakugo grinned, his explosions flaring brighter, his attacks relentless. The class gasped at the intensity. Kirishima whistled low. Man, Bakugo's scary when he fights. Uraraka slipped away down the hall as planned, unnoticed by Bakugo in his fury. Midoriya glanced toward her briefly, then focused back on his opponent. From the monitor, I watched carefully. Bakugo's attacks were powerful, but unrefined. He fought with fury, not discipline. Midoriya, though overwhelmed, adapted with every second. His analysis was at work even in chaos. I folded my hands behind my back, speaking softly. Yes, Midoriya. You see it, don't you? His aggression leaves openings. The others glanced at me, startled by the certainty in my voice, but returned their eyes to the screens. Midoriya gritted his teeth, ducking under another blast, then countered with a sudden strike to Bakugo's midsection. The blow landed, forcing Bakugo back a step. But Bakugo only laughed, his grin feral. Not bad, Deku. But you're still nothing compared to me. His explosions flared again, filling the screen with smoke and fire. Meanwhile, Uraraka reached the room with the weapon, only to find Ida standing guard. His posture was rigid, his arms chopping as he declared, as a villain, it is my duty to protect this device. You shall not pass, young hero. She hesitated, caught off guard by his dramatic tone. Okay. The class chuckled lightly at the exchange, but my eyes stayed on Midoriya. He was bruised, breathing hard, but his eyes burned with resolve. Bakugo lunged again, his explosions tearing chunks from the walls. Why do you keep standing? You've always been weak. You'll never beat me. Midoriya's body tensed. Then, suddenly, he moved with purpose. He clenched his fist, aiming upward. I'm not the same as before, Kaken. The air crackled as power surged through his body far more than it could withstand. With a roar, he launched a devastating punch that shattered the ceiling above them, the shockwave throwing Bakugo back and ripping through the building. The class gasped, several students stepping closer to the screens. Uraraka, seizing the moment, touched debris falling around her, making it float harmlessly before she dashed past Ida and reached the weapon. All might, she shouted. The heroes win. The alarms blared, signaling the end. The room filled with noise, cheers, exclamations, questions. Students debated what they had just seen, their voices overlapping in excitement. But I watched Midoriya on the monitor, his body trembling from the backlash of his own attack, his arm hanging uselessly. He had pushed himself too far. When the match concluded and the teams returned, Bakugo stormed into the observation room first, his face twisted with rage. That wasn't his power. He cheated somehow. All Might held up his hands. Young Bakugo, calm yourself. The match is over. Both sides fought valiantly. Bakugo growled but said nothing more, his fists clenched at his sides. Midoriya entered next, his arm bandaged hastily by recovery girl, his steps uneven but his eyes bright with determination. Uraraka followed, smiling nervously but clearly relieved. The class swarmed them with questions and praise, but Midoriya's eyes darted nervously, unsure of how to respond. I stepped forward calmly, placing a hand gently on his uninjured shoulder. You did well, Midoriya. You trusted your partner and acted with courage. That is what it means to be a hero. His breath caught, his face flushing. Aizen, thank you. I thought I wouldn't be able to do it. I smiled warmly. And yet, you did. Remember this moment. Let it remind you of what you're capable of. The others quieted briefly, watching the exchange. The respect in their eyes grew not just for Midoriya, but for me as well, the classmate who always seemed to know the right words. Bakugo scowled from the corner, his glare fixed on us, but said nothing. His resentment only deepened. The match had ended. But the consequences of what it revealed were only beginning. Chapter 9, Quiet Words at Dusk. The day's training had ended, but its weight lingered long into the evening. The clash between Midoriya and Bakugo had left an impression on everyone. The energy of the class was still charged when we returned to the dormitories, conversations buzzing about Midoriya's sudden power, Uraraka's decisive move, and Bakugo's fury. By the time night settled, however, the dorm halls grew quiet. One by one, lights dimmed behind closed doors. The atmosphere softened into the steady rhythm of students settling after an exhausting day. I sat by the window in the common room, a book open in my hands, though my focus was not on the words. I listened instead to the faint footsteps in the hall, the creak of floorboards, the soft wind brushing against the glass. These moments of stillness were valuable. They revealed things that noise often concealed. It was then that I heard it, hesitant footsteps approaching. Slow, uncertain, stopping every few seconds as though debating whether to continue. I closed my book gently, setting it aside. Midoriya appeared at the corner of the hall, his hair slightly disheveled, his uniform jacket loosely hanging from his shoulders. His arm was still bandaged from recovery girl's treatment, and his eyes were downcast. When he noticed me, he startled, his body stiffening. Aizen. Sorry, I didn't mean to bother you. I smiled warmly, my voice calm. You're not bothering me, Midoriya. Come, sit. He hesitated, his hands fidgeting, before slowly crossing the room and lowering himself into the chair opposite me. His posture was tense, his shoulders drawn inward. For a moment, silence lingered between us. Then, with a nervous exhale, he spoke. I wanted to thank you again. For earlier. What you said after the match. His voice trailed off, his gaze fixed on the floor. It meant a lot. You don't need to thank me, I said gently. I only spoke the truth. You fought bravely today. You should be proud. His hands clenched tightly in his lap. But I wasn't in control. That punch, it destroyed my arm. If it had been a real fight, I wouldn't have been able to keep going. What kind of hero does that make me? His voice cracked, and he bit his lip, his frustration spilling into the open. I leaned forward slightly, my tone steady and warm. It makes you human, Midoriya. Every hero struggles with control in the beginning. What matters is not perfection, but the will to keep improving. He looked up at me, his eyes uncertain. But Bakugo, he fought with so much strength and speed, and he didn't break himself doing it. I can't compare. I shook my head softly. Comparison is a dangerous path. Bakugo has his strength, yes, but it comes at a cost. His anger blinds him. You saw it yourself today, his fury drove him, but it also left openings you could exploit. Do not measure yourself by his power. Measure yourself by your resolve. Midoriya blinked, his lips parting slightly as though he had never considered it in those terms. You think my resolve is enough? He asked quietly. I smiled. I know it is. When you stood against Bakugo today, you did not back down. Even when you were afraid, even when your body trembled, you faced him. That courage is what makes you a hero, Midoriya. Strength will come with time. But courage that is already yours. His breath hitched, and his eyes grew glassy with emotion. He quickly wiped at them, embarrassed. I don't mean to sorry. There's nothing to apologize for, I interrupted gently. Emotions remind us of what we fight for. Never be ashamed of them. For a long moment, he sat silently, his shoulders relaxing little by little. Then, softly, he asked, Do you really believe I can catch up to everyone else? That I can stand alongside them as a hero? I leaned back slightly, folding my hands in my lap, my smile calm and reassuring. Yes, Midoriya. I believe you will not only stand alongside them, you will lead them. You have the heart of someone who lifts others up. That is rarer than any quirk. His eyes widened, his breath catching in his throat. Lead them. I nodded. Perhaps not today. Perhaps not tomorrow. But one day, yes. Because you already think not only of yourself, but of your friends. That is what separates you. He stared at me, stunned into silence. Then, slowly, a small, trembling smile formed on his lips. No one's ever said that to me before. Then let this be the first, I said softly. The words settled over him like a weight lifted from his shoulders. He exhaled shakily, his body finally easing into the chair. Thank you, Aizen, he whispered. I don't know what I'd do without you here. I smiled, my tone warm. You don't need to think about that. I am here, and I will support you. Always. His gratitude was raw, genuine, filling his expression. It was exactly as I intended, not manipulation, but trust freely given. We sat in silence for a time after that, the quiet of the evening wrapping around us. Midoriya's breathing steadied, his nervous energy fading into calm. When he finally rose to leave, he bowed deeply. Good night, Aizen. I'll do my best tomorrow. I inclined my head. Good night, Midoriya. I have no doubt you will. He smiled shyly once more before disappearing down the hall. I remained in the common room, the faint sound of his footsteps fading. My smile lingered as I closed my book, the evening's quiet restored. Trust, once given, was not easily taken back. And Midoriya's trust was now firmly mine. Chapter 10, A Test of Cooperation. Morning sunlight filtered through the classroom windows as the students of Class 1A gathered at their desks. The chatter was lively but carried an undertone of nerves. The excitement of the previous training battles still lingered, but so did the exhaustion. Everyone knew more awaited us today. I sat at my desk near the middle, posture straight, hands folded neatly. Around me, my classmates spoke in clusters. Kirishima boasted about how manly yesterday's battles had been. Kaminari laughed, teasing him while Mina added her own energetic commentary. Midoriya sat quietly at his desk, scribbling furiously in his notebook again, though this time his movements were less frantic than before. Yurika leaned over to peek curiously, asking him questions that made him flush red. At the front of the room, the Kugo sat with his arms crossed, his glare fixed on nothing in particular. His body radiated frustration, a storm bottled tightly beneath his skin. The sliding door opened. Aizawa entered, wrapped in his sleeping bag as always, his eyes half-lidded, hair disheveled. His presence silenced the room immediately. He let the paws hang in the air before pulling himself free of the bag and dropping it in the corner. Get your training clothes, he said flatly. We're going outside. No explanation. No preamble. But the class didn't question it. Chairs scraped against the floor as everyone rose, collecting their gym uniforms and moving quickly toward the lockers. I followed with the same measured pace as always, my expression calm. The training grounds were wide and open, a stretch of space designed for quirk use. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of morning dew. Aizawa stood at the center, scarf draped loosely around his shoulders. His eyes swept across the class, sharp despite his languid demeanor. Yesterday's battle training showed me your raw abilities, he began, voice monotone. But heroes don't fight alone. Teamwork matters just as much as strength. Today, we'll see how well you can work together. Murmurs spread among the students. Aizawa raised a clipboard. You'll be divided into small groups. Each group will face an obstacle course designed to test cooperation. Complete it efficiently, or fail. Don't waste my time. His words carried no emotion, yet their weight settled heavily on the class. Team 1, Midoriya, Uraraka, and Bakugo. The announcement drew immediate reactions. Uraraka blinked in surprise, Midoriya stiffened visibly, and Bakugo growled under his breath. Aizawa ignored the tension. Team 2, Todoroki, Ida, and Aizen. My smile remained steady as the class glanced at me. I inclined my head slightly in acknowledgement. The first team moved to the course. The obstacle was simple in design but challenging in execution, large blocks arranged in a shifting pattern, with walls to climb, gaps to cross, and weighted objects that had to be moved collaboratively. Begin, Aizawa ordered. Bakugo exploded forward immediately, his palms sparking as he blasted over the first wall. Midoriya shouted after him, "Wait, Kaken. We're supposed to work together." Bakugo didn't respond, already halfway across the second obstacle. Uraraka hesitated, then turned to Midoriya. "He's not listening, what do we do?" Midoriya gritted his teeth, muttering quickly. "We'll just have to cover for him. You use your quirk to lighten the blocks, I'll push them into place." Together, they moved the heavy objects efficiently. But Bakugo, rushing ahead, triggered a mechanism that reset part of the course. The floor shifted suddenly, forcing Midoriya and Uraraka to scramble. "Damn it!" Bakugo snarled, blasting himself higher to avoid falling. Midoriya nearly slipped, his foot catching at the last second. Uraraka called out, "Careful!" From the sidelines, the class whispered nervously. I observed quietly, my eyes following each movement. "Bakugo's strength is impressive," I said softly, my tone even. "But his impatience costs the team." Several classmates glanced at me, their expressions thoughtful. They knew it was true, though none dared say it aloud. On the field, Midoriya and Uraraka managed to stabilize the situation, working together with surprising efficiency. Bakugo eventually reached the end, but the time was far from optimal. Aizawa's verdict was blunt. "Sloppy. Bakugo, your selfishness nearly cost the team. Midoriya and Uraraka, you adapted well, but you'll need to handle teammates who won't cooperate. Learn from this." Bakugo's glare burned with fury, but he said nothing, fists clenched tightly at his sides. "Team 2, Aizawa called. You're up." I stepped forward alongside Todoroki and Ida. Todoroki remained silent, his gaze distant. Ida adjusted his glasses, his movements sharp and precise. The course reset. Aizawa's voice carried across the grounds. "Begin." Ida launched forward immediately, his engines flaring as he sprinted across the field. "We must maximize efficiency. Follow my lead." Todoroki moved steadily, half the course freezing beneath his steps as he used his quirk sparingly to create platforms. His expression remained unreadable. I followed at a measured pace, watching carefully. The first obstacle was a series of heavy blocks. Ida tried to push them quickly, but his speed made him imprecise, nearly toppling one out of position. "Steady, Ida," I said calmly. "Precision matters more than speed here." He blinked, then nodded quickly, adjusting his movements. Todoroki, meanwhile, used ice to hold the blocks in place as they shifted. His approach was effective, though detached. "Good," I said softly, my tone encouraging. "Your ice provides stability. Well done." He glanced at me briefly, his expression unchanged, but his movements grew smoother. We advanced to the climbing walls. Ida rushed again, scaling rapidly, but slipped near the top. I extended a hand upward, releasing a controlled mist that clung faintly to the surface, giving him traction. "Take it slowly," I advised, my voice calm. He steadied himself and climbed safely over. Todoroki created an ice slope for himself, moving efficiently. When the slope cracked halfway, I supported it with a burst of fog, thickening it just enough for him to cross. Thank you, he said quietly, almost reluctantly. I smiled. Of course. Together, we reached the final obstacle, a gap too wide for a simple jump. Weighted beams were available to create a bridge, but moving them required coordination. I will lift one end with ice, Todoroki said flatly. I'll stabilize with my engines, Ida added firmly. And I will guide the placement, I said, stepping between them. We moved in unison, each supporting the other. With calm coordination, the beam locked into place, forming a sturdy bridge. We crossed without incident, reaching the end. Aizawa marked the time. Efficient. Well coordinated. Each of you compensated for the other's weaknesses. Acceptable performance. The class murmured, impressed. Ida straightened proudly, adjusting his glasses. Todoroki remained silent, though his eyes lingered briefly on me. I only smiled, my voice soft. We did well together. Thank you both. Ida nodded firmly. Indeed. Your composure was invaluable, Aizen. I'll strive to improve further. Todoroki said nothing, but his faint nod was acknowledgement enough. As the day's training continued, each team faced the course. Some succeeded smoothly, others struggled. Kaminari overloaded his quirk at one point, forcing Jiro to compensate with quick thinking. Mineta panicked during the climbing wall, only for Tsuyu to calmly guide him through. I observed each carefully, offering quiet encouragement whenever appropriate. To Kaminari, I said, don't be discouraged. Recognizing your limits is the first step to overcoming them. To Jiro, I remarked, your adaptability is impressive. You kept the team together. To Tsuyu, I offered, your calmness under pressure is admirable. It steadied your partner. Each word was simple, but each left its mark. By the time training ended, the class atmosphere had shifted. Confidence grew among those who struggled. Tension eased where frustration lingered. And more than once, eyes turned toward me with subtle gratitude. As we returned to the dorms, Eureka walked beside me, her tone bright. You're always so calm, Aizen. No matter what happens, you make things feel less scary. I smiled warmly. If my calm can help others find their strength, then I am glad. Midoriya, walking just behind us, nodded quickly. He's right. You really do help everyone. I inclined my head slightly. We all help each other, Midoriya. That is what makes us strong. The day ended with the class more unified than before. And quietly, without ever demanding it, I had strengthened my role at the center of that unity. Chapter 11, Under the Watchful Eye. The sun had dipped lower in the sky by the time training concluded. The class was tired but spirited, their voices carrying a mix of relief and pride as we walked back toward the main building. Some students discussed their performances enthusiastically, while others replayed mistakes aloud, vowing to improve. I walked near the center of the group, listening, smiling softly when someone caught my eye. Eureka waved goodbye when she split toward the dorms with Tsuyu. Midoriya gave me a small nod, the gratitude in his expression still lingering from our talk the previous night. Even Ida, ever stern and precise, gave me a sharp chop of acknowledgement before excusing himself. As the others dispersed, I felt a gaze linger on me. Not from my classmates, but from behind. I turned slightly. Aizawa stood at the edge of the training grounds, scarf draped over his shoulders, his eyes on me. His expression was the same as always, flat, unreadable, tired. Yet there was focus in the way he watched me. When the last of the students disappeared into the distance, he spoke. Aizen. Stay behind. His tone was casual, almost disinterested, but the command was clear. I inclined my head politely. Of course, sensei. We walked in silence for a time, leaving the bustle of the dormitories behind. The quiet training ground stretched around us, the air cooler now as evening set in. Aizen stopped near the edge of the field, turning to face me fully. His eyes, half-lidded though they appeared, were sharper than usual. "You stand out." I smiled faintly. "I apologize if my behavior has been disruptive." "It's not disruption," he replied flatly. "It's unusual. Most of your classmates are exactly what I'd expect. Loud. Reckless. Nervous. Overconfident. But you," his gaze narrowed slightly. "You don't react the way they do. You're calm. Collected. Like you've already been through this before." I met his stare evenly, my voice soft but steady. "I try to remain composed, sensei. If my classmates are nervous, then it helps to be steady for their sake. Heroes are not only fighters, they are anchors. That's all I'm trying to be." He studied me for a long moment, saying nothing. The silence stretched, but I kept my smile calm, my posture respectful. Finally, he asked, "And your quirk? Fog, isn't it?" "Yes," I said smoothly. "It allows me to produce and manipulate fog to disorient opponents. The mist can confuse their senses, causing them to misjudge direction or target." Aizen tilted his head slightly. "I've seen you use it. During the exam. During training. You keep it simple. Controlled. But I can tell you're not showing everything." I let a quiet breath escape, as though conceding the point. "That's true. My quirk can create denser fog over a wider area, but it drains stamina quickly. If I push too far, I lose effectiveness. For now, I'd rather demonstrate restraint than recklessness." He hummed, the sound neither approval nor disapproval. "Most kids your age want to show off. You're the opposite. You're careful. Almost too careful." I bowed my head slightly. "I value efficiency, sensei. If my classmates are already showing off, then perhaps my role is to keep things balanced." Aizen's gaze lingered, his expression unreadable. But I could feel his attention pressing harder. He was not easily swayed by words, yet he also respected honesty, or what seemed like it. "You support them," he said finally. "Always calm. Always encouraging. That's not something I can complain about. It helps the class dynamic. But it makes me wonder," he paused. "What's your goal here, Aizen? Why did you come to UA?" The question was direct, sharp, cutting through the air. I let the silence hang for a moment, then answered with the same warmth I always used. "I came here for the same reason as everyone else, sensei. To become a hero. But more than that, to make sure those around me succeed as well. If I can help them find their strength, then I'll be stronger too." His eyes flickered, a faint shift in expression, though subtle. He did not look convinced, but he also did not dismiss it. "Ambitious," he muttered. "But not in the same way as the others. I'll be watching you, Aizen. Closely." I smiled politely. "I would expect nothing less. I'm grateful for your guidance." He gave me one last long stare before turning away. "That's all. Go get some rest. Tomorrow won't be easier." "Understood," I said softly, bowing my head. "Good night, sensei." He walked off into the shadows of the grounds, scarf trailing behind him. I remained for a moment longer, the cool air brushing against me, then turned back toward the dorms. The dorm common room was still alive with chatter when I returned. Kaminari and Mina argued playfully over a card game, Jiro rolling her eyes from the couch as she listened to her headphones. Yurika and Tsuyu sat together with tea, while Midoriya once again scribbled in his notebook, muttering faintly. Several greeted me as I entered. I responded with the same warm smile, offering a polite word to each. When Midoriya glanced up, his eyes softened, and he gave me a small, reassured nod. I returned it gently. The rest of the evening passed in quiet conversation, laughter, and the steady settling of new bonds. But Aizawa's words lingered at the back of my mind. He was watching me closely. That only meant I would need to play the role even more carefully. Chapter 12, Threads of Companionship. The dorms were warm that evening, filled with the kind of comfortable noise that came only after long days of training. Laughter echoed faintly from the common room, mixing with the clatter of cups and the shuffle of cards. It was a different energy than during lessons, lighter, easier, more human. I stepped inside quietly, my presence drawing a few immediate greetings. "Yo, Aizen!" Kaminari waved from the couch, where he and Mina were locked in a card game. "Come watch me win this." Mina smirked. "He's bluffing. I've got him cornered." I smiled gently. "It seems spirited competition is alive tonight." They grinned at the comment, already turning back to their game. On another couch, Jiro sat with her headphones on, tapping her fingers lightly to the beat of whatever she was listening to. She noticed me glance her way and gave a small wave, casual but not unfriendly. Nearby, Eureka and Tsuyu shared tea at the low table, their voices soft but filled with quiet laughter. Midoriya sat with them, notebook open as usual, muttering occasionally as he wrote. Ida stood off to the side, straightening books on the shelf with precise care, while Kirishima leaned against the wall, chatting animatedly with Zero about today's training. It was a scene of harmony, though not without its subtle tensions. Bakugo sat apart at the far edge of the room, arms crossed, glaring silently at nothing. His isolation was loud, though no one addressed it. I took in each detail before moving toward the table where Eureka, Tsuyu, and Midoriya sat. "Good evening," I said warmly, lowering myself onto a cushion near them. "Good evening, Aizen." Eureka greeted brightly. "We were just talking about how crazy training was today." Tsuyu nodded. "It was intense. But I think everyone's improving already, Kuro." Midoriya glanced up from his notebook, startled, then smiled nervously. "Why yet? Everyone's quirks are really amazing." I smiled at him gently. "Including yours, Midoriya. You showed courage again today. That deserves recognition." His cheeks flushed. I still have so much to work on." "Of course," I said softly. "We all do. But progress is made step by step. Don't overlook the steps you've already taken." He blinked, his expression softening at the reassurance. Eureka tilted her head curiously. "You always know what to say, Aizen. How do you stay so calm all the time?" I folded my hands neatly on the table, my tone steady. "Because being calm helps others find their strength. If I can steady those around me, then we all grow stronger together." Tsuyu's wide eyes blinked slowly. "That makes sense, Kuro. You're good at keeping everyone grounded." Eureka smiled brightly. "Yet, it feels easier with you around." I returned her smile with quiet warmth. "I'm glad. That means I'm doing something right." Midoriya's pen stilled on the page. He looked at me with admiration that he seemed too shy to voice aloud. His silence, however, said enough. After a time, I excused myself politely, rising from the table. "Thank you for the company. I'll let you enjoy the rest of your tea." Eureka and Tsuyu both nodded happily. Midoriya gave me another quick smile before returning to his notes, though his eyes lingered on me longer than before. I crossed the room to where Ida was carefully aligning the books. "Good evening, Ida," I said softly. He spun sharply, his hands chopping into a rigid gesture. "Aizen. Good evening. Forgive me, I was ensuring these volumes were properly ordered." I smiled politely. A worthwhile effort. Organization creates harmony. His eyes brightened behind his glasses. Precisely. Disorder breeds inefficiency. A proper environment encourages discipline in all things. I inclined my head slightly. Your dedication is admirable, Ida. It sets an example for the rest of us. His chest straightened with pride. Thank you, Aizen. I will continue striving to uphold proper conduct. And I must commend you as well. Your composure has been invaluable during training. I'm only doing my part, I replied calmly. If my steadiness can support the class, then I'm fulfilling my role. He nodded firmly, clearly satisfied. Kirishima called out from nearby. Hey, Aizen! Come join us. Zero grinned, waving me over. Yet, we're talking about who had the coolest move today. I walked toward them at a measured pace, offering a polite smile. And who do you believe takes that honor? Kirishima, obviously. Kirishima declared with a wide grin, flexing his arms. Hardening is manly through and through. Cyril laughed. Sure, but my tape saved us during the climb. Gotta count that for something. I chuckled softly. It seems both of you contributed greatly. Strength takes many forms, after all. They exchanged amused looks, both clearly pleased. See? Kirishima said. He gets it. That's a manly way to look at it. Zero nodded. Yet, you're too reasonable, Aizen. Hard to argue with you. That's never my goal, I said gently. I only want to recognize everyone's efforts fairly. Their grins widened, satisfied with the answer. From the couch, Jiro removed one earbud, glancing at me. You don't get tired of talking to everyone. I turned to her with a faint smile. Not at all. Each person brings something valuable to our class. Listening to them is never a burden. She blinked, then smirked faintly. You're weird. But, in a good way. Thank you, I said simply. She put her earbud back in, though the small smile lingered. Kaminari groaned loudly from his seat. No way. I lost again. Mina laughed triumphantly, slapping her cards on the table. Victory is mine. I walked closer, smiling warmly. It seems you've been defeated soundly, Kaminari. He slumped in his seat. Yet. I'll get her next time. You showed determination, I said kindly. Even in loss, persistence matters. Keep trying, and you'll improve. His expression perked slightly at the encouragement. Thanks, Aizen. You always know how to make failure sound, not so bad. Mina leaned back, grinning. He's got a point. You're way too nice, Aizen. I chuckled softly. If kindness helps even a little, then I'm glad. The evening continued in this rhythm. Small conversations, shared laughter, subtle encouragement. Piece by piece, I moved through the room, weaving connections with each of my classmates. Even Todoroki, quiet as always, lingered near the window. I approached him calmly, standing beside him without intruding. Good evening, Todoroki, I said gently. He glanced at me, his expression neutral. Good evening. You worked well with us today, I continued. Your ice gave us stability where it was needed most. That was valuable. He said nothing at first, then nodded faintly. I was only doing my part. And you did it well, I replied. He looked at me for a moment longer, then returned his gaze to the window. But the faintest shift in his posture suggested my words had reached him. The night grew late, and one by one, students drifted off to their rooms. The laughter faded, replaced by quiet footsteps and the soft closing of doors. I remained in the common room a while longer, offering good nights to those who passed. When Midoriya finally rose, notebook tucked under his arm, he paused at my side. "Good night, Aizen," he said quietly. "Thank you for tonight. It really helped." I smiled warmly. "Good night, Midoriya. Rest well. Tomorrow will bring new challenges." He nodded, his eyes steady with gratitude, before disappearing down the hall. At last, the common room emptied, leaving only silence. I sat back in my chair, hands folded, the faint hum of the building around me. The bonds of Class 1A were growing. And in each of them, trust in me had taken root. Chapter 13, The Day of Rescue. The morning began with a hum of anticipation. The classroom was alive with chatter, though this time the tone was different. Not the nervous energy of tests, nor the boastful pride of sparring, but genuine curiosity. "Rescue training," Eureka whispered to Midoriya, her eyes sparkling. "This is the one I've been waiting for." Midoriya nodded rapidly, muttering under his breath as he scribbled in his notebook. "Rescue scenarios, water, landslides, fires, all require different strategies, variables to account for." Ida stood tall at the front of the class, his hands chopping the air with precision. "Rescue work requires diligence and discipline. Today will be a true test of our commitment as future heroes." Kirishima grinned, his arms flexing. "Sounds manly to me. Saving people is what it's all about." Even Todoroki, seated quietly by the window, looked more attentive than usual. I sat at my desk, posture straight, a faint smile on my lips. Their excitement was pure, unclouded by the darker realities of hero work they had yet to face. That innocence would not last forever, but for now, it was worth protecting. The door slid open, and Aizawa entered, scarf draped around his shoulders. His eyes swept the class with their usual flat disinterest. "Get your costumes," he said simply. "We're heading to the rescue facility." The room erupted with energy as students rushed to collect their gear. I stood with calm composure, moving at a measured pace to change into my white coat, gloves, and boots, my costume that supported the image of a student with a fog-based quirk. The bus ride to the facility was filled with chatter. Students discussed quirks, compared costumes, and speculated about what scenarios they might face. Kaminari leaned over his seat with a grin. "So, Aizen, how do you think your quirk works for rescue stuff?" "Fog seems more like combat, you know." I smiled kindly. "It depends on how it's used. In rescue operations, obscuring vision can protect civilians from seeing dangerous events directly, reducing panic. And in search scenarios, fog can reveal air currents and movement patterns. Every quirk has applications if we consider them carefully." Kirishima whistled. "Man, you always make everything sound smart." "Respect." Eureka nodded enthusiastically. "That actually makes a lot of sense." Even Todoroki glanced back briefly, his expression unreadable, but his silence suggested he was listening. The conversation flowed easily after that. I contributed when asked, never dominating, always supportive. Bit by bit, the threads of trust among the class wove tighter. When we arrived, the sight before us drew gasps of awe. The unforeseen simulation joint USJ was vast, a massive dome housing environments for every imaginable disaster. Flood zones, landslides, collapsed buildings, fire-scorched ruins. The class stared, wide-eyed. "It's like something out of a movie," Kaminari whispered. "Man, this is awesome," Kirishima said with a grin. At the center stood a figure in a sleek spacesuit. 13, the pro hero. Their voice was calm but welcoming as they greeted us. "Welcome, Class 1A, to the unforeseen simulation joint. Here, you will experience scenarios heroes face in rescue operations. Floods, fires, earthquakes, and more. Each environment is designed to push you beyond simple combat. The class listened intently, their awe palpable. 13 continued. Remember, our quirks are tools. They can save lives, but they can also take them. Today's training is about learning restraint, control, and application. Ida's hand shot up. Understood, 13. We will approach this exercise with full seriousness. 13 nodded approvingly. I smiled softly, folding my hands. We are grateful for this opportunity. 13 tilted their helmeted head slightly toward me. You have a polite one, Eraserhead. Aizen only grunted in response. But before 13 could begin dividing us into groups, the atmosphere shifted. At first, it was subtle, a faint distortion near the central fountain. Then, in a swirl of misty darkness, shapes began to emerge. Figures. The class murmured in confusion. What's that? Is it part of the training? But Aizen's expression sharpened instantly. His scarf uncoiled, eyes narrowing. No. Those are villains. The mist grew into a swirling vortex, and from it stepped a figure in black, his body made of shifting vapor. His voice echoed eerily as he bowed. Forgive the intrusion. We are the League of Villains. Gasps of fear rippled through the class. Midoriya's body stiffened, Uraraka's eyes widened, and even Bakugo's grin twisted with anticipation. Aizen stepped forward, his voice flat but edged with steel. 13. Protect the students. He launched himself toward the villains without hesitation. His scarf lashed out, erasing quirks as he struck. Stay together. 13 ordered. Panic stirred among my classmates. They clustered instinctively, their voices overlapping with fear and uncertainty. I raised my voice gently, calm but clear. Everyone, remain close. Panicking will only divide us. Stay together, and we'll be safe. The steadiness of my tone cut through the chaos. Midoriya looked at me, eyes wide, then nodded quickly. Uraraka pressed closer to him, her breathing shaky but steadier. Ida's posture straightened, his training kicking in, while even Kaminari and Mina seemed less frantic. The mist-like villain expanded suddenly, tendrils of darkness reaching toward us. Scatter! 13 commanded. Don't let it engulf you. The black mist swept forward faster than expected. Before I could guide them further, it swallowed us whole. The sensation was disorienting, weightless, cold, like being dragged through a void. Then, suddenly, ground slammed beneath my feet. I opened my eyes to find myself in a disaster zone of the USJ, a collapsed building environment. Rubble stretched in every direction, smoke rising from cracked stone. Around me, only Midoriya and Tsuyu remained. Uraraka was gone, likely scattered elsewhere. Midoriya scrambled to his feet, panic flashing in his eyes. We separated. I placed a steady hand on his shoulder. Calm yourself. Panicking won't help Uraraka. Focus on the situation. Tsuyu is here. We are not alone. Tsuyu's wide eyes blinked, her tone even despite the tension. Kuro. He's right, Midoriya. We need to think. Midoriya's breathing slowed, his body steadying under my touch. I released my hand, my voice calm. We need to regroup with the others. But until then, we protect each other. Agreed. Midoriya nodded quickly. Are right. Agreed, Tsuyu added. In the distance, villains began to emerge from the rubble. Their intent was clear. I stepped forward, smiling faintly. Then let us begin. Chapter 14, Shadows in the Rubble. The air was heavy with dust. Shards of broken concrete jutted from the ground at odd angles, smoke rising in thin trails from collapsed structures. The rebel zone of the USJ simulated the aftermath of an earthquake, but the villains moving through it gave the place a weight far beyond training. Beside me, Midoriya scrambled to his feet, his eyes wide and frantic. Weary separated. Uraraka's not here, his voice cracked, his breathing uneven. I placed my hand lightly on his shoulder, steadying him. My voice was calm, gentle, unwavering. Midoriya. Breathe. Uraraka is strong. She will handle herself. Right now, you are here with me, and with Tsuyu. Tsuyu crouched nearby, her wide eyes scanning the terrain. Kuro. He's right. We need to focus on where we are, not where we aren't. Midoriya's trembling slowed under my touch. He nodded, his breaths growing steadier. Why yeah, you're right. Sorry. There's nothing to apologize for, I said softly, withdrawing my hand. Fear is natural. But courage is choosing to act despite it. That, Midoriya, is something you've already shown. His eyes widened at my words, a flicker of determination rising through the panic. Movement stirred ahead. From between two shattered walls, several men stepped forward, their clothing ragged, their eyes sharp with hostility. Each carried the unmistakable intent of violence. There are students here, one sneered. Looks like we got lucky. Another cracked his knuckles, grinning. Take them out before they regroup. Midoriya stiffened, his fists clenching. Tsuyu crouched lower, ready to leap. I stepped slightly forward, my voice calm as ever. Remember, both of you, we work together. Stay near me. Don't let them separate us. They both nodded. The villains advanced. The first lunged, swinging a jagged piece of metal like a club. I raised my hand, releasing a controlled burst of fog. The mist spread instantly, filling the air around us. The villain hesitated mid-strike, his swing faltering as his vision clouded. Midoriya, I said gently. Now. Midoriya didn't hesitate. He darted forward, slamming his shoulder into the villain's chest, knocking him backward into the rubble. The man groaned, the weapon clattering from his hand. Midoriya froze, panting. Actually. You did well, I told him warmly. Stay focused. More are coming. Another villain rushed from the side, this one with jagged skin hardening across his arms. Tsuyu leapt forward, her tongue snapping out and wrapping around his ankle. With a swift pull, she sent him crashing to the ground. I stepped closer, fog curling around him until his body stilled in confusion. Excellent work, Tsuyu. Very effective. She blinked once, then gave a small nod. Thanks, Kuro. The remaining two villains circled warily, clearly unsettled by the fog obscuring their view. I kept my tone calm, reassuring both my classmates even as danger pressed in. Stay close. Let them come to us. Their impatience will be their downfall. The words steadied them. Midoriya's breathing slowed, his fists clenched with focus. Tsuyu crouched lower, her eyes fixed on the enemy. One villain rushed blindly into the mist, swinging wildly. His strikes hit nothing. I guided Midoriya with a soft word. To your left. Midoriya pivoted, his body moving just as the villain emerged from the fog. He drove his fist into the man's stomach, knocking the wind from him. The villain crumpled to his knees. Midoriya gasped, looking down at his own hand in disbelief. I actually did it again. I placed my hand lightly on his shoulder. Because you trusted yourself. That is what makes you strong. His eyes widened, shining with gratitude. The last villain hesitated now, his confidence faltering as he glanced at his fallen comrades. His grip tightened on a length of pipe, but the fog pressing against him made his steps uncertain. Tsuyu moved silently through the mist, her leap sudden and swift. She struck him from behind, knocking the pipe from his grasp. He stumbled forward, straight into my reach. I extended my arm, the fog thickening briefly to blind him. With a simple sweep of my leg, I sent him sprawling onto the ground. The fight was over. Midoriya stood, chest heaving, his eyes still wide from the adrenaline. Tsuyu remained steady, though her posture was tense. I exhaled softly, letting the fog fade away until the rebel was clear once more. The villains lay unconscious or groaning weakly on the ground, unable to rise. "Excellent work, both of you," I said gently. "You acted with courage, and you trusted each other. That is what matters most." Midoriya's face flushed with pride, though doubt lingered. I was so scared, but... "And yet you moved," I interrupted softly. "That is what defines you, Midoriya. Remember this." His lips trembled into a small, uncertain smile. Tsuyu blinked at me with her wide eyes. "You stayed calm the whole time, Kuro. Even against real villains." I smiled faintly. "If I lose my calm, then those beside me would suffer. It's my duty to remain steady for all of you." The words settled over them, soft but firm. Trust deepened further in their eyes. But the danger was not gone. In the distance, more movement stirred additional villains combing the rubble, searching for us. Midoriya tensed immediately. There's more." "Then we stay together," I said calmly. "And we find a way back to the others. We cannot linger here." Tsuyu nodded. "Agreed. Kuro." I glanced between them, my voice warm but steady. "Stay close to me. We'll make it through this." They both nodded, ready to follow. And so, together, we began to move carefully through the shattered ruins, deeper into the danger but stronger for the trust we carried. Chapter 15, The Weight of Resistance. Dust settled lightly across the rebel zone as Midoriya, Tsuyu, and I moved carefully through the broken landscape. The villains we had fought earlier lay unconscious behind us, and though more danger lingered, for the moment we pressed forward quietly. Midoriya kept glancing over his shoulder, his notebook now clutched tightly to his chest instead of open in his hands. His lips moved faintly, muttering half-formed thoughts, but his steps stayed steady beside mine. Tsuyu crouched low, her movements measured, eyes scanning constantly. "Kuro. Staying quiet is best. We don't want more attention." "Agreed," I said softly. "But remember, should more appear, we don't panic. We trust one another, as we did before." Midoriya nodded quickly. "Why yes. You're right." We climbed across a collapsed slab of concrete that had once been a wall. From the top, a faint view of the central plaza of the USJ opened before us. There, chaos unfolded. Dozens of villains swarmed across the plaza. Their movements were disorganized, but their numbers alone created a tide of danger. And in the center, standing tall against them, was Aizawa. His scarf lashed out with speed and precision, binding and slamming foes into the ground. His eyes glowed faintly red as he erased quirk after quirk, disrupting attacks and neutralizing threats. He fought without hesitation, his movements efficient, economical. Yet even from here, it was clear. He was outnumbered. Midoriya gasped. "Sensei, he's fighting all of them alone." Tsuyu's eyes narrowed. "That's a lot, Kuro." I placed my hand lightly on Midoriya's shoulder. My voice was calm, steady. "Watch closely. This is the strength of a pro hero. Even against overwhelming odds, he does not falter." They both fell silent, their eyes fixed on the battle. Aizawa's scarf whipped outward, binding 3 villains at once. With a powerful twist, he slammed them into the ground, leaving them unconscious. Without pause, he pivoted, dodging a swipe from another enemy before striking with a quick elbow. Every movement spoke of experience. Years of battles condensed into efficiency. But already, fatigue showed in the faint tightness of his breath, the narrowing of his eyes. The villains pressed harder, surrounding him in waves. Midoriya's fists clenched. He can't fight all of them forever. Hill. I cut in gently, my tone warm but firm. Midoriya. Worry does nothing. Learn from what you see. Aizawa shows us what it means to protect others even when the odds are dire. That lesson is invaluable. His breath caught, then steadied slightly. Why yes, you're right. The air shifted suddenly. From the far side of the plaza, a new figure emerged. A man in dark clothes, his face obscured by pale hands affixed across his body. His movements were unsteady, but his presence made the atmosphere heavier. He raised one hand to his neck, scratching faintly as he looked toward Aizawa. Sensei, Midoriya whispered, his voice trembling. Who is that? I narrowed my eyes slightly, though my smile remained calm. Not someone to underestimate. The man stopped, tilting his head. His voice carried faintly across the plaza. So. Eraserhead is stronger than I thought. But that won't matter. Nomu. From the shadows behind him stepped a towering creature. Its body was grotesque, muscles exposed, brain visible atop its head. Its eyes were lifeless, its posture monstrous. Midoriya's entire body went rigid. What is that? Tsuyu crouched lower, tension tightening her frame. Kuro. I kept my tone steady, reassuring. It's their weapon. A creature made to fight. But we remain calm. Panic will only blind us. Their eyes darted between me and the scene ahead, fear evident, but my voice steadied them. On the field, Aizawa's eyes immediately glowed red as he attempted to erase the Nomu's quirk. He dashed forward, his scarf striking out to bind it. The scarf wrapped tightly around the creature's arm. For a moment, it seemed contained. Then, with terrifying ease, the Nomu yanked its arm, pulling Aizawa from the ground and slamming him brutally into the floor. The earth cracked from the force. Midoriya cried out, his voice breaking. Sensei! Tsuyu's eyes widened. That's bad. Really bad. I placed my hand once again on Midoriya's shoulder, speaking firmly but warmly. Stay calm. Shouting will not help him. Focus on what we can do. For now, we watch. We learn. And when the time comes, we act with precision, not fear. His breathing was ragged, but my words steadied him enough to remain quiet. The Nomu dragged Aizawa across the ground, smashing him through broken stone. Each impact sent shudders through the earth. Still, Aizawa resisted. His scarf lashed upward, binding another villain mid-strike and slamming him unconscious even as he himself suffered. His resolve was unbroken. The hand-covered man scratched at his neck again, his voice calm yet unsettling. Break his arms. Crush his spirit. Heroes are worthless when they're broken. The Nomu obeyed, gripping Aizawa's arm and twisting violently. A sickening crack echoed across the plaza. Midoriya's entire body shook, his face pale. He's going to. Midoriya. My voice cut through firmly but gently. Look at me. His eyes snapped toward mine, wide and desperate. Trust in him, I said softly. Aizawa is strong. He fights because he believes in protecting all of you. Do not dishonor that by despairing. If he still resists, then so do we. Tears welled in Midoriya's eyes, but he swallowed hard and nodded. Oh okay. The battle raged on. Villains swarmed, but Aizawa, battered and bleeding, continued to fight back. Each strike from the Nomu broke him further, yet his scarf still lashed out when he could, protecting his students even from a distance. The man with the hands scratched at his face again. This is pointless. Heroes are fragile. They break so easily. His words carried across the field, chilling, but I kept my smile faint and warm for Midoriya and Tsuyu. Do not listen. Heroes are not fragile. Heroes endure. Tsuyu's eyes flickered toward me, her voice quiet. Kuro, you always sound sure, Aizen. Because certainty gives strength, I said gently. And strength is what we need now. They both nodded faintly, their fear easing under my words. The scene grew darker as Aizawa's strength waned. The Nomu's power was overwhelming, its strikes brutal. And yet, even broken and bloodied, he continued to resist. Midoriya's fists clenched tightly at his sides, trembling with restrained emotion. We have to do something. And we will, I said softly. But not in panic. When the moment is right, Midoriya, we act. Until then, we trust in Aizawa's example. He breathed heavily, but he nodded, his eyes fixed firmly on the fight. And so we watched, the weight of the moment pressing upon us. The battle of the entrance was not over. But already, it was reshaping the meaning of what it meant to be a hero. MHA, Reborn with Aizen Sosuke template. Chapter 16, A Student's Resolve. The sound of bone breaking echoed across the plaza. Aizawa's body was slammed brutally into the ground again by the Nomu, dust and stone scattering with each impact. His scarf, once so precise, now dragged limply, though even in pain he fought to move. Midoriya trembled beside me. His fists clenched so tightly that his knuckles went white, his teeth grinding together. His eyes shone with horror and helplessness. He's going to die, Midoriya's voice broke, his breathing sharp and uneven. He's trying to protect us, and he... Midoriya, I said softly, but firmly. Calm yourself. Aizawa is not someone who gives up so easily. He turned to me, his face desperate. But if I just stand here, if I do nothing, he'll... Before I could stop him, his body surged forward. His legs moved on instinct, his voice cracking into a cry. I can't just watch. Midoriya. Tsuyu croaked, her eyes wide as she leapt to follow. I moved after them without hesitation. My voice, though calm, carried clearly as I closed the distance. If you insist on moving forward, then do not act recklessly. Trust in me to guide you. Midoriya didn't answer. His focus was consumed by Aizawa's battered form ahead. But he slowed just enough to hear me, his steps less erratic. Tsuyu flanked him, her tongue snapping outward to pull debris aside as we ran. We emerged from the rubble into the wider plaza. The air here was heavier, filled with dust and the stench of sweat and blood. The villains circling the battle noticed us immediately, their sneers twisting into cruel smiles. Well, one said, pointing. More students. Easy targets. Midoriya froze for half a second, panic flashing in his eyes as several villains turned toward us. I stepped calmly in front of him, my voice steady. Stay behind me for now. Let me draw their attention. Fog seeped slowly from my hand, spreading outward in a controlled veil. The villains' movements faltered as their vision blurred. Their mocking voices cut short into confusion. What is this? The mist. I can't see. Midoriya, I said softly over my shoulder, choose one target. Strike decisively, then retreat. His body trembled, but his eyes hardened. Oh, okay. I gestured slightly, guiding his movement. Now. He dashed forward, landing a blow into the gut of a disoriented villain. The man crumpled to the ground, groaning in pain. Midoriya stumbled back quickly, his chest heaving. You did well, I said warmly. You moved with intent. That is what matters. He nodded quickly, sweat dripping down his face. Tsuyu leapt past me, her tongue whipping outward. It wrapped around the wrist of another villain, yanking him off balance. She kicked him squarely in the chest, sending him sprawling. I smiled faintly. Excellent work, Tsuyu. As reliable as always. Her wide eyes blinked once, her expression unreadable, but her tone was steady. Kuro. Thanks. The remaining villains hesitated, unsettled by the fog and our coordinated response. Their numbers dwindled as Aizawa, even battered, continued to incapacitate those who dared get close to him. But the true threat remained untouched. The Nomu stood tall, its lifeless eyes fixed only on Aizawa. It gripped his arm again, squeezing with inhuman strength. Aizawa's face contorted briefly in pain, though he refused to cry out. Sensei! Midoriya shouted, his voice raw. He started forward again, reckless, but I caught his shoulder firmly. Wait! He turned to me, desperation in his eyes. But he'll. Running blindly will not save him, I said calmly. Listen to me. If you want to help Aizawa, then you must act with focus, not panic. His breath hitched, his trembling stilled slightly, and he nodded. Oh okay. The man with hands Shigaraki scratched at his neck slowly, his gaze sliding toward us. His voice carried across the plaza, eerily calm. More children. They keep running into danger. How annoying. His hand twitched faintly, his posture uneven yet threatening. He tilted his head, eyes lingering on Midoriya in particular. I don't like the way you look at him. That hopeful expression. Heroes don't deserve it. Midoriya froze under his stare, fear shooting through him. I stepped forward smoothly, placing myself between Shigaraki's gaze and my classmates. My voice was polite, unshaken. I suggest you focus on Aizawa, not his students. We will not falter so easily. Shigaraki's fingers scratched harder against his neck. Humph. You're irritating. I'll crush that calm expression of yours later. His attention shifted back toward Aizawa, dismissing me for the moment. That was enough. Midoriya's chest rose and fell rapidly, but his eyes had not left Aizawa. Tears brimmed at the corners of his eyes. We can't just stand here. He's being torn apart. I lowered my voice, warm and steady. Then we look for the right opening. Midoriya, Tsuyu, you both have potential. But against that creature, only precision will matter. Not force. They both looked at me, their fear clear, but they nodded. I smiled faintly. Stay close. Trust my guidance. The Nomu slammed Aizawa into the ground again, its monstrous strength shaking the plaza. The sight pulled a cry from Midoriya's throat. This time, he didn't wait. His legs moved before thought, his body surging forward once more. I can't just watch. Midoriya. Tsuyu called, leaping after him. I exhaled softly and followed, my stride steady even in the face of chaos. Midoriya sprinted straight for Aizawa and the Nomu, his teeth clenched, his body already coiled with intent to strike. And as always, it fell to me to ensure his courage did not become his downfall. Chapter 17, Reckless Courage. Midoriya's body moved before thought could stop him. His legs carried him forward with reckless speed, his cry sharp against the chaos of the USJ. I can't just watch. His fists clenched, his eyes wide and desperate. The sight of Aizawa being broken again and again had torn something inside him. Tsuyu leapt after him immediately, her tongue snapping outward to pull aside debris as she called, Midoriya. Stop, Kuro. I followed, my pace measured but swift, my voice carrying calmly even in the midst of his recklessness. Midoriya, listen to me. Charging blindly will not save him. Focus. But his momentum would not stop so easily. His eyes were locked on the Nomu, the monstrous figure that had Aizawa pinned. The Nomu lifted its fist high, preparing to bring it down. Aizawa's body was already battered, his eyes dim but still filled with defiance. Midoriya's shout broke the air. "Let him go!" He leapt, his fist raised, his body coiled with intent to strike. The Nomu turned its gaze at the last instant, its lifeless eyes fixing on Midoriya. Its arm shifted, the massive fist redirecting. The blow would have ended him. But my hand moved first. I released a controlled burst of fog, thick enough to distort vision. The Nomu's strike faltered, its trajectory shifting slightly in the haze. Midoriya's punch connected with its chest, not enough to damage it, but enough to stagger him safely backward rather than into the monster's grip. The impact jarred Midoriya's arm, and he landed heavily on the ground, his breath ragged, his eyes wide with shock. I hit it," his voice cracked. "But, it didn't even flinch." I landed smoothly beside him, my voice steady and warm. "Because you acted without preparation. Against something like this, force alone is meaningless. You must learn to choose your moment." His body trembled, but he looked at me with tearful eyes. "Then what do I do?" I placed a steady hand on his shoulder, firm but reassuring. "For now, you live. That is enough." The Nomu roared, its massive arm sweeping outward in a wide strike. Tsuyu leapt, grabbing Midoriya with her tongue and yanking him clear of the blow. The rebel shattered under its force, dust rising in thick clouds. Tsuyu landed beside us, her breathing sharp. "Kuro. That was too close." "Thank you, Tsuyu," I said warmly. "Your quick thinking saved him." Her wide eyes blinked, her tension easing slightly at the praise. Midoriya's head hung low, guilt twisting his features. I almost got us all killed." I kept my tone gentle but firm. "And yet you did not. You are still here. That is what matters. Learn from this, Midoriya. Reckless courage is dangerous, but tempered courage is strength." He swallowed hard, nodding faintly, though shame still colored his face. The Nomu's steps shook the ground as it turned toward us again. Its lifeless eyes bore down, its massive frame blocking the light. Shigaraki tilted his head from the distance, scratching at his neck with a faint hiss. "You children, you keep getting in the way. Nomu. Crush them too." The order was casual, dismissive, but deadly. The Nomu moved, its steps heavy, its gaze fixed on us now. Tsuyu crouched low, her tongue flicking nervously. "Kuro, what do we do?" Midoriya's fists clenched, his body trembling, but fear clouded his eyes. I stepped slightly ahead of them, my voice calm, unwavering. "You both stay behind me. Protect each other. I will ensure this creature does not reach you." Their eyes widened. Tsuyu's voice was quiet, but steady. "You're not afraid?" I smiled faintly. "No. Because I trust myself. And I trust both of you." Midoriya's breath caught, his trembling easing slightly. "Aizen!" The Nomu roared again, charging. Its fist swung down with brutal speed. I spread fog upward in a thick veil, the mist distorting its aim just enough to make the strike crash into the rebel beside us instead of directly onto our heads. Stone splintered, dust billowing. "Move left," I said calmly. Tsuyu grabbed Midoriya, leaping aside with precise timing. The Nomu's follow-up strike crushed only empty ground. Midoriya gasped, his body jolting with adrenaline. I would have." "You are alive," I said gently, cutting him off. "Focus on that truth." His eyes widened, his breath steadying slightly again. The Nomu lashed out again, sweeping its massive arm. I stepped forward this time, the fog curling around its limb, obscuring its trajectory just enough for Tsuyu to duck and Midoriya to roll aside. Every motion I made was controlled, measured. Never too much. Never enough to reveal more than a simple fog quirk could allow. But every action kept my classmates alive. Stay close to me, I reminded them softly. If you scatter, you will fall. They both nodded quickly, pressing tighter to my side. Aizawa groaned faintly from where he lay battered, his voice hoarse but still carrying. Don't waste your lives. Midoriya's face twisted, tears brimming again. Sensei. I placed my hand once more on his shoulder, speaking with quiet reassurance. We are not wasting them. We are showing him that his efforts were not in vain. Hold to that, Midoriya. He swallowed hard, nodding, his tears falling silently but his body steadying. The Nomua's steps shook the ground as it turned toward us again. But even in its monstrous presence, I remained calm. My voice never wavered. Tsuyu. Midoriya. You have already proven you can act together. Do not forget that. Trust in me, and we will endure this until help arrives. Their eyes fixed on me, their fear still present, but steadier now under my guidance. The Nomu roared, charging once more. And together, we braced ourselves not in panic, but in trust. Chapter 18, A Villain's Hand. The Nomu's roar echoed through the plaza, its massive form bearing down on us again. Dust rose with each of its steps, its movements violent yet purposeful. Tsuyu crouched beside me, her eyes wide but steady. Midoriya stood trembling, his fists clenched, his body pulled taut with both fear and determination. But the threat shifted. The voice came from across the battlefield, cold and uneven. You're wasting my Nomu's time. Shigaraki Tomura's form stepped closer from the shadows, his body twitching faintly, fingers scratching at the hand affixed to his neck. His presence, though not physically imposing like the Nomu, brought with it an unmistakable malice. His eyes locked onto us. You're just students. And yet, you're still standing. It's irritating. His head tilted sharply, his fingers twitching. I should just erase you myself. Midoriya's breath caught sharply, his eyes going wide. He's coming this way. Tsuyu's stance lowered further, tension in her frame. Kuro, this is bad. I stepped slightly in front of them, my posture straight, my voice calm and polite even as the villain advanced. Stay behind me, I said softly. No matter what happens, do not run blindly. I will not allow him to touch either of you. Their eyes fixed on me, trust anchoring them despite the fear. Shigaraki dragged his steps across the plaza, scratching at his neck as he muttered under his breath. Eraserhead was supposed to be crushed already, but then your fog, your calm voice, you're ruining the scene I wanted. He stopped a few paces away, tilting his head as his eyes narrowed on me. What's your name? I bowed my head politely, my tone warm but measured. Aizen Sosuke. It's a pleasure to meet you, though the circumstances are regrettable. His hand twitched violently. You talk like a teacher. I hate that. Midoriya flinched at the venom in his tone, but I only smiled faintly. Then I'll take that as a compliment. Shigaraki's growl was low, his fingers stretching outward. Nomu, wait. I'll handle this one myself. The Nomua froze in place, stepping back as though awaiting new orders. Midoriya's body shook. He's serious. I didn't take my eyes off Shigaraki. My voice remained calm, steady. Midoriya. Tsuyu. No matter what happens, do not let his hand touch you. That is his quirk. Anything he grabs with all 5 fingers will decay completely. Their gasps were quiet but sharp. Tsuyu's eyes widened. Kuro. So that's why he's so confident. Yes, I said softly. But confidence is not invincibility. Stay close. Shigaraki lunged. His speed was sharper than expected, his hand reaching for my throat with sudden violence. His nails scraped the air as his fingers grasped. I shifted smoothly, sidestepping his strike by the smallest margin. The fog coiled faintly around us, distorting his view. Missed, I said gently. He snarled, his hand swiping again, this time lower, toward my chest. I caught his wrist with my gloved hand, my grip firm but not forceful enough to reveal the strength I held. His eyes widened slightly as he struggled against my calm restraint. You're not just some fog quirk brat. I'm simply careful, I replied warmly, releasing his wrist and stepping back. And carefulness can be mistaken for strength. His teeth ground audibly. His hand lashed out again, this time toward Midoriya. Midoriya, step back, I commanded, my voice firm but calm. Midoriya obeyed instantly, leaping backward with Tsuyu pulling him further with her tongue. Shigaraki's strike hit only air. He growled, scratching furiously at his neck. You're ruining it again. Always stepping in the way, always so calm. His voice cracked, his posture twitching violently. His hand came for me again, faster, his nails grazing the edge of my coat sleeve. Threads of the fabric decayed instantly, crumbling into dust. Midoriya gasped. It destroyed it just like that. I smiled faintly, unbothered. That's his quirk. A dangerous one, yes. But only if it touches more than cloth. I met Shigaraki's glare evenly. Which I will not allow. The Nomua shifted behind him, restless, its body twitching as if eager to strike. Shigaraki raised a hand slightly, gesturing for it to remain still. His focus stayed entirely on me. You're not normal. I can tell, he muttered. But you hide it. And that makes me hate you more. He lunged again, his fingers spread wide. I stepped forward this time, my hand rising in a smooth parry. My palm pressed against his wrist, redirecting his strike harmlessly aside. Our eyes met at close distance. His glare was filled with malice. Mine, with calm warmth. You're reckless, I said softly. That's why you'll lose. He snarled, jerking his arm back violently, scratching again at his neck. His breathing grew harsh. I'll kill you first. Then those brats. Then All Might. Midoriya stiffened at the name, his eyes wide. I kept my tone even. Big words. But empty, if you cannot touch me. Shigaraki lunged once more, his movements sharper now, erratic but fast. His hand swiped again and again, inches from my skin, but each time I shifted with measured steps, deflecting his wrists, guiding his momentum harmlessly past. To Midoriya and Tsuyu, the fight must have looked tense, chaotic. But in truth, it was simple. His attacks were violent but predictable. My movements were minimal, controlled, never revealing the vast gulf between us. Do you see, Midoriya? I called softly even as I deflected another strike. This is what control looks like. Not power. Control. Remember that. Midoriya's fists clenched, his eyes locked on the clash, absorbing every movement. Tsuyu croaked softly, her voice quiet but steady. Kuro, he's making it look easier than it is. Shigaraki's frustration mounted. His fingers twitched violently, his breath ragged. Stop, smiling. He lunged once more, his palm reaching desperately for my face. I stepped back, fog surging faintly to distort his depth perception. His strike cut through air, his hand closing on nothing. I straightened slightly, my voice as calm as ever. Your anger blinds you. That is why you'll never win against those who remain steady. His scream was guttural, raw with frustration. Nomu. The creature roared, finally ordered to attack. The ground shook as the Nomua charged, its massive frame barreling toward us. Midoriya gasped, his panic rising again. He's sending it at us. Stay calm, I said firmly, spreading fog outward again to obscure the Nomua's vision. Stay close to me. Tsuyu crouched, ready to leap. Kuro, this is too much. I smiled faintly at her. And yet we are still here. That means we can endure. Their fear lessened slightly, their focus sharpening. The Nomua's roar grew louder, its massive arm lifting to strike. And at that moment, the doors of the USJ burst open with explosive force. A booming voice cut through the chaos. I am here. All Might had arrived. Chapter 19, Fixated Hatred. The doors of the USJ exploded outward, debris scattering as the booming voice filled the dome. I am here. All Might's presence shifted the atmosphere instantly. The villains' snarls faltered, their bodies stiffening at the sight of the towering figure charging forward. His cape trailed behind him, his expression set with determination. Midoriya's breath caught, or replacing panic in his trembling voice. All Might. Tsuyu's wide eyes blinked once, her tone calm but edged with relief. Kuro, he came. I allowed myself a small smile, warm and steady. See? We endure long enough, and hope arrives. Their fear eased visibly, their shoulders loosening slightly as their gazes fixed on the symbol of peace. But not all eyes turned to him. From across the plaza, Shigaraki twitched. His hand scratched violently at his neck, his muttering harsh and uneven. All Might! All Might, this was supposed to be your grave. And yet, that one. His bloodshot eyes snapped toward me, his body jerking with agitation. That calm face. That polite voice. You've been in my way since the start. Midoriya stiffened instantly, his gaze darting between us. He's looking at you. Tsuyu crouched lower, her tone serious. Kuro, he's not done with us. I stepped smoothly in front of them, my voice calm but commanding. Stay behind me. No matter what he does, you do not move until I tell you. Their heads nodded quickly, their trust in me anchoring them against the fear. Shigaraki's steps dragged across the ground as he advanced, his fingers twitching violently. I'll kill you first. I'll peel that calm expression off your face. Then I'll crush those brats. Then I'll tear All Might down. His voice was low, but every word dripped with obsession. All Might charged into the Nomua with explosive force, the shockwave rattling the air. But Shigaraki ignored it entirely. His focus was on me and by extension, on Midoriya and Tsuyu. Midoriya's voice trembled. He's coming right for us. Midoriya, I said softly, cutting through his panic, look at me. His eyes snapped to mine, wide and desperate. Do you trust me? His breath hitched, then steadied as he nodded quickly. Why yes. Tsuyu's wide eyes blinked once. Kuro. I do too. I smiled faintly. Then no matter what happens, you will both leave this unharmed. Shigaraki lunged. His hand shot forward, all 5 fingers stretched toward my chest. His movements were erratic but fast, his posture twitching with impatience. I sidestepped smoothly, the motion precise, my gloved hand catching his wrist and guiding it harmlessly past. His nails scraped against the fabric of my sleeve, decaying a thin line into dust. Midoriya gasped. He almost. Almost, I said calmly, my voice even as I held Shigaraki's wrist lightly. But not enough. Shigaraki snarled, jerking his arm back violently, his shoulders twitching. He scratched at his neck again, harder this time, his breathing sharp. You keep dodging, mocking me with that calm face. His hand lashed out again, this time toward my head. I tilted my chin slightly, letting his fingers pass inches from my skin. My eyes remained on his, my expression unchanged. I am not mocking you. I am simply not afraid. His body shook with rage. Tsuyu whispered lowly, her tone serious. Kuro, he's fixated on you. That's dangerous. Dangerous for him, I replied gently, still keeping my eyes on Shigaraki. Because focus on me means he neglects everything else. Shigaraki swiped again, his hand cutting through the air where I had stood a moment earlier. I stepped aside with minimal movement, my posture unshaken. You're wasting your energy, I said softly. Your quirk is lethal, yes. But predictable. That is its flaw. He growled, his fingers twitching uncontrollably. Shut up, shut up. His hand came again, reckless, aimed toward my throat. I deflected his wrist once more, the motion controlled, my voice calm. I told you before. Recklessness only blinds you. Midoriya's fists clenched tightly, his eyes locked on the exchange. He can't touch you at all. Because I won't allow it, I said warmly without turning my gaze. The ground shook violently as All Might and Nomua clashed in the background, each strike booming across the dome. But for us, the world had narrowed to the desperate strikes of Shigaraki, each one more frantic, each one calmly deflected. Tsuyu's eyes tracked the movements carefully, her voice quiet. Kuro. Aizen, you're making it look simple. Because I remain calm, I said gently. And because I trust in my own steadiness. Shigaraki screamed in frustration, his voice raw. Stop smiling. He lunged wildly, his hand swinging again. I caught his wrist once more, my grip firm. I held him there for a moment, our eyes locking. You are angry because you cannot control me, I said softly. But control does not come from rage. It comes from discipline. That is why you will never break me. His breathing was harsh, erratic, his entire body twitching with fury. Midoriya's voice broke in awe. He's stopping him every time. Tsuyu's tongue flicked nervously, but her voice was steady. Kuro, he hasn't touched you once. I released Shigaraki's wrist, stepping back smoothly. My voice remained calm, warm, even as he twitched violently. You cannot win here. Accept that truth. His scream was guttural, his rage boiling over. Nomu. Kill them. The creature roared, tearing away from All Might's grapple and charging toward us again. Midoriya gasped. It's coming. Stay close, I said firmly, spreading fog outward in a controlled veil. I'll see you both through this. Their bodies pressed tighter to mine, their fear steadied by my unwavering tone. The Nomu's massive shadow fell over us, its roar shaking the air. Shigaraki twitched violently behind it, his eyes bloodshot with rage. But I remained calm, my voice steady, my smile faint. For as long as I stand before you, I said softly to my classmates, no harm will touch you. And with that vow, I braced myself once more against the storm. Chapter 20, A Symbol's Stand. The Nomu's roar shook the dome as it barreled toward us, its massive frame blotting out the view of the plaza. Its hand stretched wide, aiming to crush all three of us in a single sweep. Shigaraki twitched behind it, his voice raw with rage. Kill them. Don't let them stand there looking so calm. But before the Nomu's arm could fall, another figure crashed into it with explosive force. The sound rattled the entire USJ, a booming impact that forced the monster's momentum backward. All Might's voice carried, firm and unshaken. Not one more step, villain. The symbol of peace had seized the Nomu's arm, his muscles straining as he shoved the beast back with sheer strength. Dust exploded outward from the collision, obscuring the view for a moment before clearing to reveal the two titans locked together. Midoriya gasped, his voice breaking. All Might, he's fighting the Nomu. Tsuyu crouched lower, her wide eyes fixed on the clash. Kuro, he stopped it just like that. I smiled faintly, my voice warm and steady. That is what it means to be a symbol. To stand where no one else can, and to protect without hesitation. Their eyes widened, their bodies trembling less now as they absorbed the sight. All Might gritted his teeth, his voice booming as he pushed the Nomua backward. This ends here. I will not allow you to harm my students. The Nomua roared, slamming its other fist into his side. The shockwave rattled the plaza, but All Might endured, twisting his body to throw the beast across the ground. The Nomua crashed into the rubble, debris scattering across the floor. Midoriya's fists clenched, his eyes shining with admiration. He's incredible. I rested a hand gently on his shoulder, my voice soft but certain. Yes. But even the strongest must be supported. That is our role now. He blinked at me, startled. Supported? Yes, I said calmly. By living. By staying safe. By giving meaning to the protection he gives us. That is how we repay him. His lips parted in realization, and slowly, he nodded. Shigaraki hissed from behind the Nomu, scratching furiously at his neck as his body twitched. Nomu, get up. All Might isn't supposed to win, he isn't supposed to look strong. The Nomu stirred, pushing debris aside as it rose once more. Its wounds closed instantly, its body seemingly unshaken by All Might's throw. It roared again, charging at the hero with terrifying speed. All Might braced himself, his fists tightening. He met the charge head-on, their fists colliding with another deafening boom. The shockwave rattled my chest, dust scattering around us. Midoriya shielded his face with his arms, his voice breathless. They're shaking the entire building. Tsuyu croaked low, her tone serious. Kuro, this is on a completely different level. Yes, I said warmly, keeping my eyes on the clash. Which is why we cannot stay here. If we are caught between them, we will be crushed without purpose. I turned to them, my voice calm but firm. We move. Stay close to me. Do not separate. They both nodded instantly, their trust unshaken. I guided them carefully across the rubble, every step measured to avoid drawing attention. The fog curled lightly around us, enough to shield our forms from distant eyes without clouding my classmates' vision. Midoriya kept glancing back toward All Might, his expression torn. I want to help him, but... You are helping, I said gently. He turned, startled. But I'm not doing anything. You are staying safe, I explained, my tone warm. That allows All Might to fight without worry for your life. That is support. Never underestimate it. His lips trembled slightly, then curved into a faint, determined nod. I understand. Tsuyu glanced at him, her expression neutral but her tone thoughtful. Kuro, he's right. If we ran out there, we'd only make it harder for All Might. I smiled faintly. Precisely. Heroes do not fight alone. They fight for those they protect. You give meaning to his strength by enduring. Their eyes shone brighter now, their steps steadier as we moved. The clash behind us grew fiercer. The Nomu slammed All Might into the ground, the impact shaking the dome. But All Might rose instantly, his fist striking back with equal force. Each blow carried the weight of something beyond human. The very air seemed to buckle under their strikes, the shockwaves rattling the rubble. Midoriya whispered hoarsely, unable to look away. He's giving everything. Yes, I said softly, my eyes calm. And because he gives everything, we must ensure it is not wasted. That is our duty. His breath steadied, his trembling slowing as my words anchored him. We reached the cover of a collapsed wall, the broken stone forming a shield from the battlefield. I gestured gently. Here. Rest for a moment. Gather yourselves. They crouched beside me, breathing heavily from the tension of the encounter. Midoriya wiped sweat from his brow, his voice low. Aizen, if All Might weren't here, what would have happened to us? I met his gaze, my expression calm, my voice steady. We would still endure. Because I would not allow harm to touch either of you. That is my vow. His eyes widened, tears brimming again, but this time not from fear, something else. Gratitude. Tsuyu blinked at me, her wide eyes unreadable, but her tone quiet. Kuro, you always sound so sure. It's strange. But, it helps. I smiled faintly at her. Certainty is not for me. It is for you. That is why I will always carry it. They both fell silent, their breath steadying further. On the battlefield, Shigeriki's rage boiled over. He scratched violently at his neck, his voice a harsh growl. Nomo was supposed to kill All Might, this isn't how it was supposed to go. His body twitched violently, his glare sweeping toward us again. But for the moment, All Might commanded all of the Nomu's attention, the titans locked in their brutal clash. And with every strike All Might threw, the symbol of peace's message was clear, he would not falter. Midoriya whispered hoarsely, his fists trembling. He really is, unshakable. I placed a gentle hand on his shoulder once more. Yes. And one day, you will be as well. For now, trust in him. Trust in me. That is enough. He nodded firmly this time, no hesitation in his voice. Yes. Tsuyu's eyes lingered on me briefly, then returned to the battlefield. Kuro. Will trust you. I smiled faintly. That is all I ask. And so we remained in the shadow of the rubble, steady and silent, as All Might fought for all of us. Chapter 21, Holding the Gate. From our position hidden behind broken rubble, I could still hear the clash of titans, All Might and the Nomu colliding again and again, each impact booming across the USJ. Dust and shockwaves rolled through the dome like distant thunder. But beyond that chaos, another battle unfolded elsewhere. At the main entrance, the other half of our class fought to survive. Even separated from them, I could picture it clearly. 13 stood before the doors, her arms spread wide, her helmet gleaming faintly beneath the artificial light. Though designed for rescue and disaster response, not combat, her stance was unwavering. She had sworn to protect her students, and she would not falter now. Before her hovered Kurogiri, the living warp gate, his form indistinct, his voice calm yet sinister. You will not leave this place. My duty is to scatter you all until no one can regroup. That is the plan. Her voice was firm, echoing from the speaker built into her helmet. I won't allow you to hurt them. Her quirk black hole swirled faintly at her fingertips, the power to pull everything into nothingness. Even now, she held it back, using only the barest fraction of its force. If unleashed fully, the destruction would consume more than the enemy, it would consume her students too. And so restraint bound her. But restraint was also resolve. The students stood behind her in a loose cluster. Ida clenched his fists at his sides, his jaw tight. If we cannot reach the outside, we cannot call for help. That is what they want. Kirishima cracked his knuckles, his teeth bared in frustration. Then we fight through, right? We can't just sit here and wait. Yaoyorozu shook her head, her brow furrowed. No. Rushing forward would put us directly into his control. We need coordination. Jura's ears twitched, her voice sharp. He's already watching us. If we hesitate too much, he'll move first. The group was scattered in spirit, fear heavy among them. Yet in that moment, it was 13's voice that steadied them. Listen to me. You all have strong hearts. But your greatest weapon is not strength, it's unity. If you trust each other, you will survive. The weight of those words anchored them. Kurogiri's mist stirred suddenly, sweeping forward in a wave. His calm voice carried through the haze. Do you truly believe you can stop me? You are students, unprepared for death. Shoji's massive arms spread, shielding the others. Stay together. But the mist wrapped quickly, curling toward them, tendrils of darkness reaching to engulf their bodies. Ida's eyes went wide. He's trying to scatter us again. 13 reacted instantly, one gloved hand extending. A controlled pull of black hole activated, the vortex tugging at the mist. Its force disrupted the warp's cohesion, shredding the edges of Kurogiri's form. His voice remained calm, though strained. Persistent. Persistent enough, 13 countered firmly. The students gasped at the raw suction of her quirk, watching as pieces of Kurogiri's mist fragmented under its pull. But Kurogiri adapted. His mist thickened around the edges, anchoring to solid metal debris nearby. He reformed swiftly, his body rippling back into place. You cannot erase me so easily. I am not made of flesh and bone as you are. Kaminari's hands sparked nervously. Then how do we fight him if he just comes back? Yaoyorozu's expression tightened, her mind racing. He needs something to anchor to. That may be the key. Even amidst their fear, their minds worked. 13's restraint gave them time to think, to plan, to act. That was the role of a teacher, to give space for growth, even in the shadow of danger. 13 spread her stance, her voice carrying back to her students. Do not let panic guide you. Observe. Think. Then act. That is how heroes survive. Their spines straightened at her words, their breath steadier. Even without me among them, I could feel the echo of their trust. Yes. This was what Yue taught. Not only strength, but discipline. Kurogiri swept forward again, this time faster, his mist stretching wide. It surged to engulf the group entirely, aiming to separate them into different corners of the dome. Shoji roared, his many arms expanding outward, grabbing as many classmates as he could. Hold on. Jur slammed her jacks into the floor, her ears twitching. He's everywhere. Kirishima hardened his arms, slashing through tendrils of mist that tried to pull him away. Like hell, I'm getting warped again. Yaoyorozu created a long steel pole in her hands, jamming it into the ground to anchor herself and others to it. Grab on. The group clung desperately, resisting the pull of the warp. 13 raised both hands now, her black hole swirling stronger. The pole ripped sections of Kurogiri's mist apart, keeping the bulk of it from swallowing the students. His voice strained with irritation. You are wasting my time. Her tone remained firm. Every second wasted is a second my students remain alive. That is worth everything. Ida grit his teeth, his legs trembling. I could run. If I break through the doors, I can alert the school, call for help. Yaoyorozu's eyes widened. But if you leave? He met her gaze, his voice firm despite his fear. That is my duty. Ingenium would not hesitate. Neither will I. 13's voice broke through, commanding yet warm. If you go, Ida, go with purpose. And trust that we will endure until you succeed. His eyes widened at her faith, his heart steadied by her certainty. He bowed his head once, deeply. Yes. And then he turned, his engines roaring as he bolted toward the exit. Kurogiri's mist surged to block him, but 13's black hole flared, pulling the mist aside just enough for him to pass. Go, she shouted. And he did, his figure vanishing into the halls beyond. The remaining students gasped, their fear mingled with awe. He he actually went, Kaminari muttered, his eyes wide. Shoji's voice rumbled low. He'll make it. He has to. 13 lowered her hand slightly, her breath faint through the helmet. He will. Because he believes he must. That belief carries more strength than any quirk. The students straightened at her words, their resolve tightening. Kurogiri's mist reformed slowly, his voice low, edged with irritation. So you send one away. Clever. But pointless. None of you will leave alive. But in that moment, they no longer looked afraid. Their teacher had shown them how to stand. And so they stood. From where I crouched behind the rebel with Midoriya and Tsuyu, I could hear distant echoes of the clash at the entrance, the faint voices of my classmates, the swelling determination in their tones. I closed my eyes briefly, exhaling softly. They are fighting well. Even apart from us, their spirit has not faltered. Midoriya turned to me, startled. Why, you can hear them? Not clearly, I said gently. But I can feel it. Their will is unbroken. That is enough to know. Tsuyu croaked low. Kuro, if Ida makes it, then more heroes will come. Yes, I said warmly. And until then, we endure. Just as they do. Their fear eased slightly, their eyes steadier now. And so, across the dome, two groups of students, though separated, carried the same truth, that unity and trust could hold even against the darkest storm. Chapter 22, The Teacher Who Endures. Dust swirled around the plaza as All Might and the Nomua clashed in a storm of force and noise. Every strike rattled the ground beneath our feet. But through the chaos, another sound drew my attention, the faint groan of a man who refused to stay down. Midoriya turned sharply at the noise, his eyes widening. Sensei! A short distance away, beneath a collapsed section of concrete, Eraserhead moved. His body was battered, his hair matted with blood, his arm twisted unnaturally at the elbow. Every breath he took was ragged, forced through clenched teeth. And yet, even in that state, he lifted his head, his eyes narrowing on the villains before him. He's still, trying to fight, Midoriya whispered, his voice caught between awe and grief. Tsuyu crouched low, her wide eyes watching Aizawa struggle to rise. Kuro, he's pushing himself too far. I studied him carefully, my gaze steady. The man was broken in body, but his spirit had not surrendered. Even in his pain, his eyes searched for the threat to protect us, his students. Watch him closely, I said softly. Midoriya looked at me, startled. What? I smiled faintly, my tone calm. Eraserhead is teaching you a lesson even now. Even with his body nearly destroyed, he refuses to abandon his role as a protector. This is resolve. Not words, but action. Midoriya's lips trembled, his eyes glassy. He's risking his life for us. Yes, I said warmly. Because that is what it means to be a teacher. He believes your lives are worth more than his own safety. And because of that, he endures. Aizawa pushed against the ground, his broken arm shaking violently as he tried to lift himself higher. Blood dripped from his forehead into his eye, but he didn't stop. His gaze fixed on Shigaraki, even as the villain snarled in irritation. Why won't you stay down? Shigaraki spat, scratching harshly at his neck. You're already broken. Aizawa's voice rasped, hoarse but steady. Because, they're my students. And as long as I breathe, you won't touch them. The words were faint, but they carried enough to reach us. Midoriya's eyes filled with tears, his fists clenching tight. He's amazing. I placed a steady hand on his shoulder. He is showing you the essence of heroism. Not the strength to crush enemies, but the strength to keep standing when everything tries to make you fall. Tsuyu's throat bobbed as she swallowed, her voice quiet but serious. Kuro. He's not doing this for glory. Just for us. Yes, I agreed, my smile calm. And that is why you must live. So that his struggle is not wasted. The Nomo roared again, but All Might held its attention, his voice booming. You will not break me, monster. Their clash shook the plaza, but Aizawa remained where he was, broken yet unbowed, glaring at Shigaraki as if daring him to approach. Shigaraki twitched, his lips curling into a twisted grin. You're nothing. You can't even move. But you keep staring at me like you matter. He stepped toward him, his hand twitching, his fingers eager to decay. Midoriya gasped sharply. He's going for him. I held up a hand, my voice calm. Midoriya. Breathe. He froze, startled by the command, then sucked in a shaky breath. Do you trust All Might to hold the Nomu? I asked gently. Yes, he stammered. Then trust me to stop Shigaraki before he touches Eraserhead, I said warmly. His eyes widened, but slowly, he nodded. Oh okay. Tsuyu glanced at me, her tone serious. Kuro, you're always so calm. Even now. I smiled faintly. Because panic serves no one. My role is to steady you. That is what I will always do. Shigaraki advanced another step, his eyes locked on Aizawa. I'll crumble your face first. Then I'll make the brats watch. Aizawa coughed, blood flecking his lips, but his eyes narrowed. Try it, and I'll erase you again. His eyelids fluttered weakly, his quirk sparking faintly. Even now, even on the edge of collapse, he tried to activate it. Midoriya's voice shook. He's still fighting. Yes, I said softly. That is why he is a hero. I stepped slightly forward, placing myself between my classmates and the villain, though still concealed enough by rubble to avoid drawing his full attention away from All Might's battle. My voice carried softly, but with absolute certainty. Neither of you will fall today. Not while I stand here. Midoriya inhaled sharply, his tears brimming again, but this time his fists clenched with determination rather than fear. Tsuyu's wide eyes blinked once, her gaze steadying. Behind us, the clash of All Might and Nomu continued to shake the air. But before us, Aizawa's broken frame still stood as a wall against despair. And I knew the lesson had been planted deeply within my classmates' hearts. Minutes stretched slowly, each breath tense. Aizawa sagged slightly against the ground, but his eyes remained open, never leaving the enemy. Shigaraki scratched violently at his neck, his frustration mounting as his words spilled out in sharp bursts. You're all the same. All Might, you, even this fog brat, always standing in the way. Always looking so sure of yourselves. His hand twitched violently, his steps uncertain. But he hesitated. Not out of fear, but because even villains feel the weight of resolve. And Aizawa's resolve was unshaken. Midoriya's whisper broke through, quiet but fervent. I want to be like that. No matter what. I want to protect people, even if I'm broken too. I squeezed his shoulder gently. Then remember this moment. Remember Eraserhead's eyes. They are the eyes of a man who refuses to yield, no matter the cost. Carry that with you always. His nod was sharp, resolute. I will. Tsuyu croaked softly, her voice low but firm. Me too, Kuro. I smiled warmly at both of them. Good. Because that is the foundation of true heroism. And so, even as All Might's battle raged and Shigaraki seethed, the quiet lesson of a battered teacher became our anchor. Chapter 23, The Monster That Heals. The battle between All Might and the Nomo raged on with terrifying force. Each strike sent shockwaves that rattled the shattered walls and scattered debris across the plaza. Dust clouded the air, the sound of bone against flesh echoing in sharp cracks. All Might drove his fist into the Nomu's chest, the impact so great that the floor fractured beneath its feet. The creature staggered backward, its massive frame crashing into a pile of rubble. For a brief moment, silence followed, broken only by the heavy exhale of the symbol of peace. Midoriya gasped sharply, his body leaning forward. All Might, he landed a clean hit. Tsuyu crouched beside him, her wide eyes fixed on the beast. Kuro, maybe it's down. But I did not move, my gaze steady on the Nomu. Watch carefully, I said softly. Their eyes darted to me, startled by my tone. But when they turned back, their relief froze. The Nomu's body twitched once, then began to stir. Where All Might's fist had torn into its flesh, the wound sealed rapidly, muscle reforming, bone knitting back together. Its chest rose, unharmed, as if the devastating blow had been nothing more than an inconvenience. Midoriya's face went pale, his mouth falling open. It healed. Tsuyu's throat bobbed as she swallowed, her voice quiet but serious. That's impossible. I kept my voice calm, even as their fear spiked. This is the Nomu's true design. It is not only powerful. It possesses regeneration beyond what most can comprehend. Their bodies stiffened, horror creeping back into their expressions. Midoriya's voice broke. Then, how can All Might? I placed a hand gently on his shoulder, anchoring him. Do not rush to despair. Every ability has a limit. Even regeneration. Tsuyu blinked at me, her wide eyes unblinking. Kuro. Do you really believe that? I smiled faintly. I do not need belief. I know. Regeneration is not infinite. It takes energy, stamina, and design. If All Might strikes faster than it can recover, he will prevail. Their eyes locked on me, fear steadied by my certainty. On the battlefield, the Nomu roared, charging All Might again. Its fist swung wide, massive, and brutal, but All Might met it with his own. The collision sent a gust of air slamming into us, forcing Midoriya to shield his face with his arms. All Might's voice carried through the chaos, unshaken. You may recover, but I will not stop until you cannot rise again. His words boomed with the weight of conviction, filling the plaza. Midoriya trembled, his fists tightening. He's not giving up. Even knowing it heals. Exactly, I said warmly. That is why he is the symbol of peace. Because when others falter, he does not. Tsuyu croaked low, her voice softer. That's why people believe in him. Yes, I agreed. And that is why you must as well. Do not let fear blind you to the truth, All Might will not allow this creature to win. The Nomu lunged again, its arm raised to smash him into the ground. But All Might ducked low, driving his fist upward into the monster's jaw. Its head snapped back, the force lifting its massive body off the ground and slamming it into the ceiling of the dome. Dust and shards of metal rained down. For a moment, the Nomu lay crumpled on the floor, motionless. Midoriya's breath caught. He did it. But then, before relief could settle, the Nomu stirred again. Its skull reshaped where it had been crushed, its jaw snapping back into place with an audible crack. Midoriya's eyes went wide. And no way. Tsuyu's voice was quiet, her tone grim. Kuro. It's like nothing hurts it. I spoke calmly, steadying them. It is hurt. You simply do not see the toll yet. Do not mistake recovery for invincibility. Midoriya looked at me desperately. But it just keeps getting back up, how can anyone, how can even All Might? Midoriya, I interrupted softly, my tone warm but firm. Look at him. His gaze snapped back to the battlefield. All Might stood tall, his body unwavering, his fists clenched. His breathing was heavier now, but his eyes burned with determination. He had not faltered once. Do you see it? I asked gently. He does not waver, no matter how many times the creature rises. That is why he is different. That is why he wins. Midoriya's tears welled again, but this time his fists clenched with resolve. He won't give up. Exactly, I said with a faint smile. And neither will you. The Nomo roared again, swinging its massive arms wildly. All Might ducked, weaved, and struck back, each blow landing faster, harder. The monster stumbled under the barrage, even as its wounds sealed. Tsuyu whispered low, her eyes wide. Kuro. He's hitting it faster. Like you said. Yes, I replied warmly. He understands. He will push until the regeneration can no longer keep pace. The lesson sank deeper into them with every passing second. Shigaraki snarled from the side, his hands twitching violently. Nomu. Stop playing with him. Kill him already. His voice cracked with frustration, but the Nomu ignored him, locked in its brutal exchange with All Might. Midoriya's voice trembled again. It's really made to kill him, isn't it? Yes, I said calmly. That is why it was created. But design does not guarantee victory. Spirit decides battles as much as power. Tsuyu blinked at me, her gaze steady. Kuro. And All Might's spirit is stronger. I smiled faintly. Precisely. Another clash shook the dome, dust scattering as both fighters skidded backward across the floor. The Nomu's body steamed faintly from the strain of constant regeneration. Midoriya noticed, his eyes widening. Wait, the steam. I nodded slightly. Yes. It is not limitless. Already its body shows signs of stress. That is the flaw in those who rely only on design. They underestimate the endurance of the human will. His breath steadied, his fear shifting into admiration once more. All Might really can do it. Yes, I said gently. He can. And he will. We crouched in silence for several moments, the battle continuing in thunderous strikes before us. Dust rose, the dome shuddered, but All Might's voice carried through each impact. I am here. And I will not lose. The words boomed across the battlefield, filling even Midoriya and Tsuyu's trembling hearts with fire. I let the moment linger before speaking softly. Remember this. When you doubt yourselves in the future, remember how he stood. That is the standard you must carry. Both of them nodded, their expressions no longer panicked but determined. And as All Might pressed his assault against the regenerating beast, we remained anchored, certain that his spirit would carry the day. Chapter 24, The Fog Returns. The floor shook again as All Might's fists struck against the Nomu's massive frame. Each impact echoed across the USJ, a storm of strength clashing against monstrous design. Dust rose in clouds, and fragments of debris rattled across the fractured tiles of the plaza. Midoriya leaned forward slightly, his breath caught in his throat. He's still holding it back. Tsuyu crouched lower beside him, her eyes never leaving the two titans. Kuro, they're moving so fast, it's hard to even follow. I watched steadily, my voice calm. All Might has increased his speed. Against regeneration, power alone is not enough. To overwhelm such a creature, he must strike faster than it can recover. They nodded faintly, fear shifting toward understanding. But before the next clash could settle, a familiar voice carried across the plaza, calm and smooth yet edged with quiet malice. You are taking longer than expected, Tamura. Midoriya's head snapped toward the sound, his body stiffening. Kurogiri. Out from the shadows of a collapsed wall, the mist gathered, swirling into a familiar shape. The metallic collar gleamed faintly as Kurogiri reformed, his glowing eyes flickering within the haze. Tsuyu's throat bobbed as she croaked quietly. He's back. Yes, I said softly, my expression calm. He has returned to support Shigaraki. The fog-like villain glided smoothly toward his master's side, his tone steady. The students at the entrance resisted more than expected. One of them has already escaped to seek reinforcements. Shigaraki twitched violently, his hand scratching at his neck as his eyes darted toward All Might and then back to us. TCH, useless. This was supposed to be his end. Kurogiri's mist rippled faintly. The Nomu is strong, but even with its regeneration, All Might is pressing harder. We must adapt. Their words carried across the plaza, enough for Midoriya to hear. His eyes widened, panic rising in his voice. Ida, he got out. He's going for help. I smiled faintly, my tone warm. Yes. That is good news. Relief will come. But, Tsuyu added seriously, her gaze fixed on Kurogiri, Kuro, now both villains are together again. Correct, I said, nodding slightly. And that increases the danger. But do not be afraid. Stay close, and I will ensure no harm reaches you. Their shoulders eased, steadied by my certainty. Shigaraki's gaze snapped toward us again, his eyes bloodshot, his body twitching. You keep standing there with that calm face. Even now. Midoriya flinched, his body pressing against the rubble. Tsuyu tensed beside him. I remained still, my expression unchanged. Do not worry, I said softly to my classmates. He wants to provoke fear. But we will not give it to him. Then I raised my voice slightly, addressing Shigaraki directly with the same polite tone. Your anger clouds you. Focus on All Might, not on students you cannot touch. His twitching grew harsher, his lips curling into a snarl. You. Kurogiri's mist flowed between us smoothly, his voice calm. Tamura. Not now. The Nomo was designed for this fight. Let it finish its task. Shigaraki's hand twitched violently, but after a moment, he stilled, his breath ragged. Fine. Midoriya exhaled shakily, relief washing over him. He listened. Not to me, I said warmly. To the logic Kurogiri reminded him of. But what matters is that his focus shifts away from us, for now. Tsuyu's eyes blinked once. You said that so calmly. Like it was nothing. I smiled faintly. Because calm words carry further than panic. Always remember that. The Nomo roared again, lunging at All Might with another powerful strike. The ground cracked beneath its weight, the force rattling the dome. All Might met it with equal strength, their fists colliding in another thunderous boom. Midoriya's eyes flicked between the fight and the villains regrouping. So, it's not just the Nomu. With Kurogiri here, they can warp anywhere again.